Good evening. This is the City of Twinsburg Planning Commission meeting for Monday, April 18th, 2022. Roll call.
Mr. Shipley?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Kleinman?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Present.
Mr. Shebeck?
If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We begin this evening with a couple of administrative things that we need to take care of, starting with the swearing in of our returning and new commissioners. Mr. Barr?
Wonderful. We'll start with Mr. Walker, if we could.
Roger that.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. I, Michael Walker,
I, Michael Walker, do hereby swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America,
that I will support and defend the laws of the United States of America. It's like the 20th time I've made this.
the Constitution and laws of the State of Ohio,
Constitution, laws of the state of Ohio,
the Charter, ordinances, and resolutions of the City of Twinsburg, Ohio,
the charter, ordinances, and resolutions of the city of Twinsburg, Ohio,
and will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties as a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I got
As
it.
a member of the Planning Commission. Wow, who's done this a few times?
Discharge the duties as a member of the Twinsburg City Planning Commission, Twinsburg Planning Commission,
To the best of my abilities, I shall answer.
to the best of my ability, as I shall answer to God.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Two of us will get it.
Got to do shorter.
She broke it up. Mr. Shipley is going to be returning our Michael. These are yours. Just kind of ordinance.
Right, okay.
This is my employment paperwork for
Okay.
Shannon.
And if you would raise your right hand. I, Craig Shipley,
I, Craig Shipley,
do hereby swear
do hereby swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws
that I will support and defend the constitutional laws
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Ohio,
the constitutional laws of the State of Ohio,
the Charter, ordinances, and resolutions
the Charter, ordinances, and resolutions
of the City of Twinsburg, Ohio,
of the City of Twinsburg, Ohio,
and will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties as a member of the Planning Commission
discharge the duties as a member of the Planning Commission
to the best of my abilities as I shall answer to God.
to the best of my abilities as I shall answer to God.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your service. Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you. Thank you to Michael and Craig, and look forward to serving another term with you. Next is the election of the chairman and vice chairman for the next year. I need any nominations for the chairman.
I'll nominate Mark.
Second.
I'll accept. Any others? By acclamation, then, I will accept and continue to serve. Thank you. Need a nomination for vice chairman.
I nominate Mr. Shipley.
I'll nominate David.
Steve agreed via email to return as the vice chair.
Oh, good.
I'll second that.
Right. Seeing none others, then also by acclamation.
Actually, I would vote no on that, but just want that to be on record.
All right.
Steve's going to return.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, then we need a formal vote then.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor for Steve? Aye?
Aye.
Aye? Opposed?
No.
All right, so Steve will continue on as the vice chairman. We'll go on to the work session. The first item on the agenda is the lot split and consolidation for 9879 Shepherd Road. Applicant, could please come forward. And name and address and an overview of what you're looking for this evening, please.
Hello, my name is Elise Brown. The address is 9879 Shepherd Road in Twinsburg. And so what the overview is, what I wanted to have done is to, there's two lots. I bought two lots together, and one of the lots is 100 feet wide, and the other lot is about 40 feet wide. The one lot is non-conforming. That's the lot that the house is currently sitting on. The other lot is empty. The empty lot, I would like to build a house, new construction on. But in order to do that, I am going to have to take some of the footage from the empty lot and parcel it out to the smaller lot so I can have a driveway entrance. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you.
Before I spend, just one more thing, just before I spend money on a survey, which is thousands of dollars, I want to make sure that it's something that would be approvable.
So it is not something that's approvable by Planning Commission as proposed, because there are a multitude of variances that are required to do what you're requesting. So it would require review and approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals before we could act on it. I have a question regarding the driveway. Right now you have a gravel driveway that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
How are you planning on providing access to both the new lot and the existing lot? And also, you don't have a garage on the existing house, which I understand there has to be one. So how are you planning on addressing all
Well, I
of
already
that?
got an approval for the garage not being there. There was approval for an exception for that because of the size of the house and the age of the house, and kind of got grandfathered in. So the garage that had been there was torn down, and they allowed me to continue with the gravel driveway. So for the other lot, or for the other property that's going to be built, it's not going to need that space. 70 feet is wide enough for it to have a driveway, because the garage is going to be front facing. So the house is going to be about 50 feet wide. So there's going to be enough room on each side to keep up with the codes, and also to allow for a driveway for the other house and the other
So you're
lot.
planning on maintaining the existing gravel drive to the back of the existing house with no garage, and then putting in a new, I'm assuming, concrete drive to the garage of the new house?
Right. The new house will, it will, follow all the codes that are current, except for the fact that the lot will be smaller than 100 feet. It should be about 70 feet, I think, is what I put on there,
Yeah, you have
to
one.
give enough room.
Yeah, one is 66.79 and the other 73.59. Lynn, can you elaborate on the no garage and the gravel driveway remaining? Is that
Right,
doable?
it sounds like
We already did, yeah.
one of us might be confused, though. I think that maybe there was an extension granted for
Oh, we
not
got an
replacing the
exception.
garage.
Yeah,
I don't know.
This went through the mayor. This was all in an email.
It wasn't my understanding that it was a permanent exception, but it may be. I may be mistaken.
That's what I was told.
All right, well,
I
so-
mean, the house that we're discussing right now with the garage and the gravel driveway, my elderly mom lives in that house, and he made an exception to that for us, as far as, because it was a hardship financially.
we'd need to get verification. I mean, I have a concern because we're taking two lots, consolidating and then splitting them and creating two non-conforming lots with a variety of variances, but as I said, BZA will review that and make a determination whether or not it's acceptable, and then if it is, then it will come back to us.
Okay, so the reason why I'm here tonight is to see if there's something that I should spend thousands of dollars on getting a survey if it's not even something you guys would consider anyways. I don't want to sit here and spend $2,000-3,000 on a survey, which is what it costs.
Right.
And then to hear you guys say, oh, you know, no, we're not going to accept that.
Lynn, do they need the official survey done in order to go to front of BZA to make the request for the variances?
That's going to be the building commissioner's call. I could see a pathway to doing that. It's going to mean this meeting tonight, then sort of a work session meeting at BZA and seeing what they would accept, then a survey, then
The form.
back to BZA, then back here. So it's doubling the steps, but it's also allowing the applicant to move forward without spending any money unless she's sure she's got an approvable project.
Okay.
It sounds like our first step is to confirm the driveway and garage exception. I apologize, but that wasn't my understanding, but I could maybe just not be in the loop of that outcome of this.
I don't know why that makes a difference. I'm sorry, I don't understand how it makes a difference.
Well, I think what Mr. Cohen's saying is the way that this is laid out doesn't allow for a driveway to serve the existing house at the same location that the gravel is located.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to get the lot widened, so
Right.
I can have enough room for a driveway. So eventually I will be trying to build a garage and pave the driveway, you know, probably next 5 years, once I am able to get the money.
All right, well, we'll need to find out what's already been agreed upon without knowing that. I mean, we're making just assumptions, so we can do that. I'm going to see if there's any other comments or questions. David? Craig?
No, I think what you laid out makes sense, that you should probably go to BZA and get them approval before you spend your money on the survey. I think that makes sense.
There's just an issue with this that we haven't brought up. The survey document that you got in your packet indicates that the existing house is straddling the lot line that is shared. It looks like it's 2 or 3 feet. But this survey was done for the purposes of the purchase and sale.
Right.
And it says it has a margin of error of plus or minus 2 feet. So essentially, this is meaningless in terms of determining the location of the house. So, for example, if BZA were to say, well, we're not going to agree to this 73-foot wide lot, but we'd agree to the 90-foot to keep it in compliance, and we'll add the 3 feet to the narrow lot. I can't right now say that that's enough to get this house on that lot. So that's one wrinkle of this in terms of not having an actual survey document that's accurate. So
Yeah, I don't know how to, I mean,
it's a roll of the dice here.
you're saying once the survey's done, if they find out that the house is in a worse situation than what's depicted on here, it might
Right.
not work.
Then you could be going back again to BZA if you didn't get enough width. I'm just saying, there's not enough information to go on with this survey for it to be,
But I thought we worked out where I had a couple, like 5 feet or so extra to account for that amount of width taken out.
you do at the width that you're requesting for a driveway, but you don't, there's not enough information on this survey document to determine whether the existing house is fully on the small lot or whether it straddles that middle lot line and is on both lots, and at what distance it's on the other lot.
Okay, but wouldn't this take care of that because I'm widening that
But just
lot?
because you've requested this doesn't mean it's going to get approved. They may say, okay, we want you to be able to use that vacant piece, but we're not shrinking this down to 73 feet.
Okay, so if it doesn't get approved, what am I not in compliance then because of the way?
Right, you have there's a 10-foot side yard setback for the existing house. There's a 5-foot setback requirement for a driveway. When Mr. Cohen said there was a series of variances that would have to be approved in association with this, those aren't even all of them.
So if they don't approve this, then what, am I not in compliance with something? I'm not,
You can't build on the other lot then.
okay.
It would
Because
be,
you would
it'd be
affect-
non-conforming,
Yeah.
and there'd be too many variances for them to approve it if that's what happens.
Okay, so I got a whole acre lot that I bought that I can't do anything with. It's parceled out.
Yeah, I mean, based on the zoning regulations, it doesn't fit, and if it doesn't get the variance approvals, then it can't be developed as you're proposing it now.
So what is my next step then? Going to BZA? I don't have to do the survey officially to go to BZA and see what they have to say?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have like a work session with BZA to discuss it and to work through it, that therefore it would save you I mean, it's your time, but it's gonna save you the dollars until you find out whether or not it works and if it's acceptable.
Okay, so
That's what I would recommend to Keith, the building commissioner, that we move it forward as a work session to BZA without a formal survey document.
so you're gonna recommend that to me and let me know then, or?
I can let you know. Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else to share on this? Thank you. Second item on the work session is the revised final site plan review for the building addition for Moldwright 2222 Highland Road. The applicant can come forward, name and address, and an overview of what you're looking for this evening.
Emerson Marshall with Beacon Marshall Companies at 2222 Highland Road. They are looking to add, looking to add a connector between 2222 Highland Road and 2300 Highland Road. If the project goes at the same time as the addition, we'd like to plan to do the fire access around the rear side of 2300 for the new addition at 2200. And also on the new plans, it shows the 30 by 40 electrical room being added to the addition.
Right, thank you. I think the only hangup that I see on this right now is that you have two parcels that you're going to be crossing over with the adjoining link between the two buildings. I think you need to do a lot consolidation so that therefore there's no variances, everything's one big piece and everything works and follows the zoning regulations by doing such. I think the only other things that you would need to do, there was a note about replacement of an existing fire hydrant. I guess it's old style, it would need to be updated based on the fire department's request. And Lynn, are we correct, we're still waiting for the final approval of SWP3 by Summit Soil and Water?
I'm not sure if it's been submitted or not. Do you know, Emerson? Has that been submitted?
I'm unaware if it's been submitted yet.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah, probably
final
not
approval would
submitted.
be required. David?
No comments.
Craig?
What about exterior lighting? Looks like there hasn't been any anticipation of what the lighting's gonna look like exterior.
We have not submitted that. We thought that would be part of the architectural review board when we submitted that.
Is that true, or do we look at?
It's usually reviewed by the city planner and the engineering. That could be a condition of approval. I mean, there'll be probably minimal changes, but it should be reviewed.
Okay.
Building commissioner never lets that slide either. So there's 3 opportunities
Okay.
on that one.
Okay. And then I guess this looks like the proposed access and cul-de-sac is under review also, but that's for the fire access.
Fire approved that.
Oh, they did approve that? It talks about, it doesn't meet the 10-foot setback, but will require relief from the BZA for encroachment onto the adjacent parcel. That's where you're saying if they do a parcel
If they
combined, then they
consolidate.
don't have that.
Exactly.
All right.
Correct, we're gonna go with the consolidation rather than
Okay.
the appeals.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Michael?
No, sir.
Scott, anything on this?
Nothing, thank you.
Lynn, anything else?
Nothing else.
All right, so we'll make a motion during the regular portion of the meeting agenda. Obviously, the key being the consolidation, that you'll have to move forward with that. All right, thank you. Next item on the work session agenda is the final site plan review for the industrial buildings at 2321 and 2387 Old Mill Road. It's for the Skinnell properties. The applicant can come forward, please. Name and address and what we're here for this evening.
Matthew Weber, Weber Engineering Services, 2555 Hartville Road, Woodstown, Ohio. Also with me today is Michael Konzemius with Skinnell Properties. And I know we've been before the Planning Commission previously on the project, so I'll just go with a quick overview. I'll give the overview, and if there's any questions specific to Skinnell Properties or Skinnell's intentions, Michael can certainly answer those. The project consists of two buildings. It's approximately 33.5 acres. The two buildings comprise of a 299,000 square foot building on the west side of the property, 156,000 square foot building on the east side, expandable with an additional 60,000. That would be 216,000 for a total of 515,000 square feet of building on the property. As indicated in the previous meeting, we have met all, we feel that we have met all zoning requirements for the site. There were a few requests made by planning that we address at the concern or recommendation of Planning Commission. A few of those were to provide a more legible, if you will, schedule for the site lighting. To address some of the landscaping, we had original landscaping in the front of the building spaced at 16 feet on center, and to reach the 80% opacity, it was requested that we shorten that up to 12 feet and stagger where we could. We've accommodated that in the package landscaping that you had received. One of the other comments was a request for a sidewalk from the buildings to the public right-of-way. We've addressed that in the site plans. One of the other comments through engineering was to address the extension of the south turn lane from Old Mill onto Darrow Road, and the right turn lane as per the traffic impact study. We've done that and submitted those documents, as well as addressed the signalization, if you will, at Darrow Road and Old Mill. We've noted that on the plans, submitted that information. One of the other requests was documentation from our hydrologic engineer. We have submitted that as well with regards to the wells and the concern that the Planning Commission had in regards to location of the ponds relative to water wells in the area. I believe those were the items that were requested. I believe we've, to the satisfaction, at least of the review of Planning Commission, the Planning Department, we'll see if it's to the satisfaction of Planning Commission, at least satisfied the request for additional information. At this time, we're open for questions.
Thank you. Lynn, is there anything else on this that you want to share before I go through Planning Commission members?
It's been reviewed by both city engineers and by planning staff. by fire. As Mr. Weber said, we've got the hydrologic report. The county has reviewed the traffic impact study. So, yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that there's no non-compliant items associated with the site plan.
Thank you. During the public participation portion of our meeting this evening, I anticipate that there'll be some residents who'll be getting up and speaking. We're going to let them go all the way through. I would suggest that you make notes. I will give you an opportunity to answer their questions after everyone's gone through and made their comments, so that you can give them some answers, hopefully, that they'll be looking for. David, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
I mean, I think well established that I am not a fan of this project for several reasons. Number one, that we are creating what I think is going to be an absolutely terrific traffic nightmare on 91 and Old Mill, and I wish at some point in the past if we could go into a time machine and go back and had nothing to do with your project, but have access directly to 91 through the industrial properties. And I wish the initial intent of Planning Commission X number of years ago went through that, and the Sifron building was not an obstacle, but it is an obstacle. I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but I have a friend that lives on Valley View Road. He doesn't live in this community, but I was having a conversation with somebody last week about the project, and the comment back to me was, when we built Cornerstone, which I think is a great project, access for the trucks go directly onto 82 and onto Chamberlain, which is wonderful. Both are 4-lane roads, and that they're meant for that kind of traffic. Those trucks that are leaving on going south on Chamberlain and turning to go west on Highland Road, 2-lane road, and anybody who lives on that road certain times a day, which a friend of mine does, and I've gone to go to his house, drop things off, pick stuff up, to try to leave his driveway between 4 and 6 o'clock, maybe even 7 or 8 o'clock, is a nightmare. I've sat in his driveway personally 15, 20 minutes to try to get out because nobody cares to leave a space for the driveways. I have a feeling that this project is going to do the same thing to Old Mill Road, even though there's not going to be any traffic going east on it, which is good. If this project goes forward and is successful, which we're all hoping that it is, people move in, companies move in, it's 100% occupied, which would be a great thing. 91 and Old Mill is going to be a nightmare. Just like it is to get in and out of his house. If there's any way that we can put in some kind of driveway, doesn't sound like it is, but if you could look at that further, why create an artificial bottleneck at Old Mill and 91 for those trucks that are only going to go north on 91? Their intention is not to go on Old Mill. Their intention is not to go south on 91. It's to go north to get to the highways. I think we all agree about that. There has to be a better way. I'm not. As far as water quality, I don't know anything except that I like to drink a lot of water, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand most of what hydrologists will do. I do have concerns about seepage outside of the containment area for somebody who has what sounds like exceptional water quality right now with their well. Is there any way that we can put in some stipulation to go out way beyond the development of this project to protect that well water and the quality of it? Is that possible?
You can address questions from Planning Commission members as we go down.
Yeah, no.
Anything to, instead of waiting to the end, if you have something to say on them.
Well, I guess I mean, there are ways. I guess there would have to be some limitations in where if it's downstream of the pond, which there are very few wells downstream of the pond. I'm sure there are ways that we could look at providing some sort of assurance. If you read in the report, obviously, which I'm sure you did, the time frame, and these were based on conservative generalities, and conservative being conservative towards care of the wells, not conservative towards the developer's intent, if you will. I think if you read that, so there's the likelihood of there being any issue is very limited or small, and if we can look at that and agree upon a area of sampling, if you will. I'm sure we can work into that. Now, I say that with the owner beside me. I'm saying from an engineering perspective that's something that certainly can be done, as far as a developer's perspective. And he's so
certainly willing to work with you on all that.
so.
Are we a day late and dollar short on access to 91? Yeah, you kind of talked about that before. Are we?
If I can, because I took to heart what you said. I looked you in the eyes at the last meeting, and I saw your concern for the other access points, and so I had our traffic engineer do additional studies to say, what if the what's the building that's there? I apologize. Sifron, yeah. If the Sifron building wasn't there and access went out to Case, and actually in his study, and these are his actual words, is our report shows that access to Case Parkway, this would be through Sifron, will impact the intersection of Darrow Road and the Summit Commerce Parkway. So it makes your entire intersection on 91, and that its level of service degrades from a C to a D, and then there are no changes in level of service at any of the other intersections, including Old Mill, for any of the differing access scenarios. So I had him look at this. I said, can we get out at Summit Commerce, even though we don't have control of the land to get to Summit Commerce? That actually is a little problematic, but it wasn't a big degradation. Is there any way to go up to Case? And that's where the level of service dropped dramatically at the intersection. The best location for this, given all the traffic and all of the traffic study and all of the infrastructure that's there, and unfortunately is in a condition that, is not of A grade, but it's of lower grade. It has the least amount of impact. Where we're proposing to put that has the least amount of impact of the other areas. So
Is that something that you can share with us? That
we can.
I'd very much like to take a look at that.
We can do that. Yes.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Thank you. Craig?
I guess on water quality, so there was an Ohio intern office memo that talked about potential negative impacts in the area and covering up fractured bedrock, not allowing water to seep in. And then I guess that was like in April 21. And then I guess March of 22, the hydrosphere talked about a huge recharge area of like almost 2,200 acres, right? And you're taking up 1.5% of that. Does that address? I mean, I guess there is the clay and the contaminants, but from a water recharge, I guess I just read this and tried to understand it as a layman. Does that address the recharge concerns by the
certainly it's indicating that the area that is utilized to recharge the wells is so great that our area is so small it has no net impact.
So it all comes down to more containment and not getting contaminants
correct
in.
The concern would be containing those contaminants, and given the type of facility and the use, he outlined the specific, you're looking at oils, petroleum type is usually the concern. Those obviously float on your water, so they actually are not settling down into or even penetrating the clay liner. He talked about some other things, and again, these are technical terms, but we'll just call it adhesion, if you will. Where more or less you get you've probably seen where you get maybe a clay that has a film on it or something that's different particulate matter adhering to the clay. But as he went through this to talk in generally specific terms, if you will, I mean specific to this project, the idea was that there is not going to be an issue if constructed properly, and there may not even be an issue if constructed improperly, because it's one of those things that that, you know, you can't get every aspect, but if constructed properly, the clay liner would be more than sufficient, and actually a better solution than a synthetic liner to meeting the needs of protecting those wells.
Okay. And I guess just on the visual view of, so you have a section where all the trucks are going to be, the loading dock area and the trucks. Is that visually seen across the street from the residents across the street, or is it blocked by any vegetation or trees or anything? It seems like the road just goes directly back. Is there any way to put a S-bend where you don't see that? I guess that probably depends on the property that's there.
Yeah, I guess you have to look, and I don't believe, I'm trying to think of the property right across. I don't know if that looks directly up or not.
I know that's a concern that's raised, and if there's some way to use trees to block that view, you know, the light bleed or noise or anything would be helpful.
I'm going to add on a question on that might help in that situation, depending. Is there any update on the acquiring of the property at 2365 Old Mill? Because if that should happen, and we can't do if comes, you know, can't make you do it unless you get that piece of land, it would give you the ability to put that
some type of jog
in it, so that the alignment of the road would be better suited for what's happening across the street.
As of last week, that property is under contract. So we haven't closed on it, but it's under contract.
So with that being said, when that happens, depending on what happens this evening, we would expect you to come back with something revised on that front part to be able to address that driveway concern and additional landscaping that you'd now be required across the front of the property also.
Certainly.
Then I guess on the traffic, on the access drives, it talked about stop sign controls. Is that just putting a stop sign on the exit of the?
Correct.
Just so
your
stop
basic,
and look, and then
yeah, your basic stop before you enter onto a public roadway.
And I guess on the east side, so you have a ready rock wall that's going to go up there, right?
Correct.
And there's some vegetation distance to kind of, so you don't look at some stone looking wall. Are there trees planted in front of that?
Not on the low side of the wall. There are none shown.
We do have some trees along the very frontage, just to kind of block a view, but along the front of the wall we don't. At the bottom, there's about 10 feet, I believe it is, distance between the property line and that and the face of the wall.
What vegetation is there right now between the wall and the end of the property line?
What is it right now?
Yes,
What's proposed or what is existing?
I guess what's proposed probably.
No, there's nothing there now, but what's proposed?
Proposed to be.
Nothing in between the wall. Nothing in between the wall and the property line.
I think from the edge of the wall to the front of the property, I think is what the question is.
From the edge of the wall to the front of the property along at Old Mill to Old Mill.
I was actually thinking to the east, to the person's property line that you're boarding up to.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't like to look at a brick wall, but I'd like to look at trees. So, you know, obviously if there's a row of trees there, it may appease that neighbor.
Right.
That's all I'm getting at. If you consider that, and if that's something.
There's currently nothing proposed.
Okay. I think that's all I had. I mean, I obviously would love to see the traffic not go on Old Mill either, but it sounds like that's something we should. It sounds like it's a hard. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It sounds like it's something that is very difficult or impossible to do according to all the documentation. But
correct.
Let's consider that maybe as we go forward.
Would you be amenable to adding additional landscaping on the low side of the wall along the property?
Certainly. Yeah.
All the questions I had.
Thank you.
I mean, it'd have to be sized appropriately for a 10-foot area, but yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Michael.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Mr. Weber. And Mr. Conzemius. To say it a third time, Conzemius. Thank you. I'm the new guy, so I may ask questions that have been asked before.
Certainly.
And professionally, I'm used to either dealing with emergency response operations or bridge construction. So this is a little bit of a different world for me. Referring to the hydrology report from Mr. First name starts with an M.
Meadows.
So it seems this refers to 2018 soil borings. I'm not a hydrologist. I'm not a hydraulics engineer. Is 3 to 4 year old borings except a usual standard of practice within that profession?
For this current initial analysis, yes, it's sufficient. We're in process of having additional soil borings done. There will be, I don't know, we got 30 probably through there. So yeah, we're in process of having additional borings done, but at this phase, that's sufficient.
Sufficient, but so at this time, those additional, more recent borings could yield different results, no?
Well, they certainly could,
Okay.
and they could also yield
Sure.
the same results.
And the only reason I asked specifically on that is the last paragraph in Dr. Manoah's memo specifically goes to the 2018. So that's why I had that specific question. And I understand that the Campbell property is closing as anticipated. I don't need to own the ETA, but closing in is anticipated.
Correct.
So it's fair to say that to acquire that property, there had to be outreach made to the property owner there, correct? Sure, through a broker. So representative. I'm an attorney too. I used to do that stuff as well on both sides of the fence. Has there been any engagement with the neighbors that have concerns about the well water and traffic?
Not directly.
Not that you have to, but would you be willing to? Awesome. I think that's all I've got at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Scott?
Thanks, gentlemen, for coming out. Thank you to everybody here tonight for showing up. So I'm gonna leave this in the hands of Planning Commission right now, but I will say that I think the sentiment that's been expressed to me by neighbors and residents of the area is that Old Mill, what somebody told me, you know, even though we don't have an HOA and we don't have sidewalks, we're just as much a neighborhood as any other place in Twinsburg that has those things. And it's a very tight-knit community, and it is a good group of folks that have enjoyed kind of that rural area for a long time. I think there is a way that everybody can work together on this. Might be being a bit optimistic. It's going to require a little give and take on both sides, but I think that being a good neighbor and trying to fit in the neighborhood, I don't want to speak for any of these folks here, they're going to do that for themselves, but I think that is very important. And Twinsburg and Skinnell share a long history, long before my time on council or even living in the city. And you know, we have an obligation to represent our residents as well as our property owners and developers and things of that nature. And I would just say if we could find a way to do that neighborly and you know, at the behest of the Planning Commission suggestions, stuff like that, I think that'd be wonderful. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn? Anything else on this?
No, I have nothing else.
All right, thank you. Want to have a seat?
If I may, Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
With regards to the comments and questions that will be forthcoming, because I feel there may be a few, will the Planning Commission, will there be certain, I guess my question is, we can sit and potentially answer every question and spend a lot of time here all night, or are there questions that would be raised that are pertinent to the planning commission that we should address? I guess rather than, I'm just asking the question, rather than me sit and write 65 different questions and trying to address and use my discretion to decide which one should or should not, would it be wrong of me to ask the planning commission to identify the questions that are necessary to be answered?
Well, I'm pretty sure that anybody that asks a question is going to be hoping to get an answer.
Okay, then we'll be prepared. Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
I'm sure there's going to be some that are probably more pertinent than others, but
I'll do my best to jot down and answer every question that comes up.
That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's 7:50, and we're going to roll into the regular meeting agenda this evening. The first item is the approval of the minutes from the March 21st, 2022 meeting. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes will be accepted as submitted. Next is public participation. We'll have the residents come up, you name and address. Just please be aware that if an item's already been discussed and talked about, if you have new information, by all means, please share that, but there's no reason for everyone to say the same things. However, you are always welcome to come up, even if it's already been said and you just want to let us know that you agree with those statements. Please do. Be conscientious that there's a lot of people who want to speak, and when you're up there, so give everybody a chance. Starting with that.
Good evening. Name's Lynn Clark, 2485 Old Mill Road, and I'm delighted to be here tonight. Now, a couple of things. I have been a registered professional engineer in the state of Ohio since 1978. Makes me pause for just a little while. Now, most of that engineering practice is focused on hydrogeology. I have chased pollutants, I've contained pollutants over a lot of this country. Now, when I took the oath to become a professional engineer, it was very clear in the Code of Conduct for Professional Engineers. It says, first thing, you will hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. That's one of the reasons I'm here. My property may be just fine, but this is the public. I have some expertise. I want to offer it to anybody that's willing to listen to me. So, the other thing is to practice only within your area of expertise. Now, tonight we've heard some opinions that are beyond the area of expertise by the person making those statements. In fact, they hired somebody else to make comments on the hydrogeology of the site. So let's just kind of level set a little bit relative to that. Now, the other thing, I've done a lot of work associated with safety. Safety, health, and welfare are all very much intertwined at this site. I've heard this discussion about, oh, we did traffic studies. Not one of those that I could see had anything to do with pedestrian safety. We've got people that live on the street that walk across the street every day to get their mail. We've got children that live on the street that have to cross to get to the school bus. It's already dangerous for them to do so. My wife has almost gotten hit at the mailbox multiple times by people not paying attention. So we've already got enough congestion on Old Mill. So what do you do when you've got risk? You evaluate that risk. One of the typical tools is Fmea. That's the tool NASA used to get a man to the moon and back safely. It's commonly used in industry. Have you all done an Fmea? I'm guessing by that response the answer is no. Okay, so one of the things is that helps you identify what are those risks. And there's a multitude of risks associated with this, and then identify what can I do to control those factors, eliminate the risk. What are those things that we have control over? What are those factors that we can influence? The last recourse is to put in some safety device. So all of this engineering stuff, all of hydrogeology is based on data. It's science. I know a lot of people have some aversion to that, but without that data, and I've said this before, I believe you know, you're just guessing. So as we look now, and it was interesting tonight, a couple of the gentlemen of the commission took their oath, and I'm sure everybody else did previously. It says we're going to make sure the charters, ordinances, and resolutions are followed. Well, guess what? The city has a whole bunch of ordinances and charter provisions, and I can tell you, we've got some people in this audience that have done more reading in the last couple of months than they have in their lifetime. So, one of those, right at the top of the list, Ordinance 1175, Paragraph A, maintain natural, hydrologic, and ecological functions of wetlands, riparian areas, and water bodies. Maintain. Now, the plans that I've seen show finished grade of, in some parts of the property, about 20 feet above existing grade. Is that not right, gentlemen, representing the city?
Mr. Clark, they're gonna answer all the questions at the end.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can just,
Well, that's fine.
thank you.
So you all have seen it. You know there's going to be a considerable amount of fill there. How do you maintain those features if you're going to fill them in? Now, some of that too, ecological functions. That depends on the interaction between water, wildlife, and vegetation. After it was clear cut, a lot of that is gone on the site. Now, part of our ordinances also speak to, we're going to not only look just at this site, but we're going to look at the surrounding habitat. That's where we live. We all live in that surrounding habitat. And what happens there will have an influence on our property. Now, moving on. Paragraph B of 1175 says, maintain desirable ground and surface water levels. Now, I've heard all this discussion about, oh yeah, we comply with every single ordinance. Now, how do you know you're going to be able to do that without data? There have been no partial flumes put in the creeks. There have been no people whatsoever knocking on our door and say, I want to see what your piezometric surface is. Data. Data, data, data. Now, without that, you don't know which way the groundwater's going. Now, one of the key things, I found it, I'd like to say amusing, but pitiful, is not once have they mentioned all of the wells in the area in any of the documentation. The first document that we saw didn't even talk about the wells on the north side of Old Mill Road. Now, Mr. Bowling here lives north of the property. I haven't seen one document that talks about the water wells north of this site. Now, Jess, you got a well, right? You got good water in that well, too, because I've been to your house a long, long time ago. So, why are we ignoring his well? And there's other wells back in that neighborhood, too, as I recall. This is just the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. We have to be thorough in our investigations. We have to have that data for comparison. Because when it says maintain, you have to know where you're starting from. Otherwise, you'll never know where you're going to end up. You have to have data. Now, another thing is I've looked at some of the surface hydrology. We're talking about building up this site and diverting an existing stream that flows onto Mr. Hutchinson here tonight? Oh, okay. You are here. Thank you. Flows onto his property, flows onto Mr. Sikowski. Mrs. Sikowski's property, flows onto my property, and Mr. Brown's property. That water has only been flowing that way since the glaciers went back to Canada 14,000 years ago. And now this developer said, oh, we don't care about that water. We're just going to send it into a different watershed. Now, this is one of those things, it is not at all acceptable. It is not conforming with any kind of riparian law that has existed ever since the Wild West days and before. Now, a couple of other things. Not only did they miss Mr. Bowling's well, but all of the information that was used in the reporting so far about hydrogeology has been based on some very superficial mapping that was done by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. You know, that stuff was ancient and primarily dedicated to, or predicated on, what was the elevation of water in the wells when they were drilled, probably most of it in the 50s and 60s. Those well drillers, when they're out there drilling a well, all they care about is, am I going to have enough water for this household? They're not taking very close scientific measurements. Plus, there's been a lot of development since OODNR put those high-level maps together. And again, that's the importance of having to go get detailed information about what's happening on this site. Okay, moving on to ground and surface water quality. I haven't seen any presented in any report. And again, if we don't know where we are, and we wake up and we said, I think my water quality has changed, what is going to be the basis? What's going to be the recourse? Now, the other thing is, there's going to be a substantial amount of fill brought in. What's the number of cubic yards that we're planning to bring in? Anybody know? Now, whenever you bring fill from off-site, you always have a risk of bringing in contaminants. Especially good, clean fill associated with crushed limestone, a lot more expensive than bringing in ground-up roads, ground-up buildings. So, as we move on then, we've got another ordinance, 1181, one of my favorite ordinances. And it says, paragraph B, uses and values of property within and adjacent to the site will be safeguarded. Now, I haven't seen one instrument presented anywhere that says how that's going to be done. There's no caveat in there that said you should have known you bought a property close to I-2. It says they will be safeguarded. How are you going to do that? Paragraph C, very, very similar. Proposed site plan provides for harmonious relations. Harmonious relations. How do you all feel? Does this feel harmonious? You know, how would you feel if you walk out your garage door, like Mr. Hutchinson back here is going to do, and he sees a wall taller than the Great Wall of China and then it's got a building sitting on top of that. Now, I don't know how you can ever say that's harmonious. Harmonious means it blends in. It's consistent with the values of the neighborhood. Just a couple of other comments, and I'll turn the floor over to the rest of my neighbors. Gotta have the data. Without data detailed to this site, not some vague idea. One of the comments I heard proffered up here earlier tonight was, oh, we've got a huge aquifer, the Twinsburg Aquifer, thousands of acres. Well, that's nice, that's interesting, but only part of it, a far, far smaller acreage feeds our wells. Now, I care about what happens to the entire aquifer, but I'm really sensitive about what happens to my well and my neighbor's wells. And that is why we have to have a more thorough hydrogeologic study. And I would suggest at least half a dozen monitoring wells to clearly establish what is the direction of flow, what is the quantity of flow moving through that flow net. Now, history is filled with all sorts of engineering disasters. Sometimes it's just purely because the folks that were building that never had the opportunity to anticipate what those failure modes might be. Sometimes it's because the construction of the engineering device didn't go according to plan. Installation of these liners, again, that's a remedial device. Prevention. Installation of those liners, again, real esoteric. Specialized equipment, very careful. We cannot afford another engineering disaster. The risk is too high. Thank you for your time. Let's go get the data.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a couple questions?
Got some all, but I mean, we could.
I just have a quick question. Mr. Clark.
So, it's been brought up that there could be a lot of items that need to be spoken on, and instead of waiting to the end, that it might be better for both Planning Commission and the applicants to address after each person has spoken, to kind of help that, so that things aren't getting lost as they wait to hear everybody else speak. So
Thanks, and I appreciate it, because I've actually got a copy of the planning code in front of me. Could you come in, Mr. Clark, or you can do it, sit from there, whatever. So,
you probably should come to the podium so that way any comments get recorded, please.
So, you referenced 1175, I'm assuming decimal 05 regarding EIAs earlier in your presentation.
Yeah, so it's 1175.
Decimal
Some
environmental impact assessment?
I'm speaking to the Twinsburg Environmental Performance Standards.
Right. Which subsection 1175?
I don't have the code here. I just have.
That's okay, and I got it if you need to. But my question is, because, and we've talked some, I told you I might have tough questions for you too. So sub A is the application. So essentially it's the trigger provision for EIAs. Disturbance of 10 or more continuous or discontinuous acres of ground surface, development including disturbance of 5 acres or more ground surface which has been determined to be within the floodplain of Tinkers. I'm not sure that's the case here. Development which includes disturbing 1 acre or more of land to be severely sloping. Anyway, there's trigger provisions. Do you feel confident
Okay,
that an environment?
none of that language. I'm sorry, Michael.
That's okay, sir. I just wanted to know if you thought that the trigger provisions are met here with the scope of the project. Sorry, sir.
Let me tell you, the
But they
reason,
have, it has been triggered and we have an environmental impact assessment.
Thank you. See, I told you I'm the new guy, so I don't have questions that have been asked before. So,
was there something else?
right now, no. That's it. Thank you, sir.
Matt, Mike.
Yeah, my apologies to you that you didn't get that.
It's my fault for
Yeah.
not asking. Sorry.
Yes, we did provide an environmental assessment, and you should have that on record. That was one of the first things that we had to provide. I'm not sure how many questions necessarily there were, but there were some, I guess, some pointed accusations, if you will. So I don't know that I'll necessarily address those. But I will say that I don't believe that, I believe that I cited the report that was provided by our hydrologic engineer, because I am not an expert, and that's why we hired someone that is. Did not offer an opinion, but more or less a statement from the actual report itself. With regards to the amount of fill, yeah, we're in the area of approximately 20 feet. It varies where you are on the site. With regards to maintaining wetlands, as I have it written, I wrote wetlands. He may have referred riparian setbacks as well. Obviously, we are within the code and provisions set forth by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Ohio EPA. And as we have permits for those, and part of that, part of the filling is also, if you will, maintaining portions of the adjacent wetlands in accordance with the Army Corps. So we have done that.
Was it a permit, or is it an
Yes.
application of a nationwide or regional permit, or was it a letter of permission?
We actually have our full permit to fill wetlands. The impacts have been, so there are provisions. Yes, there are responsibilities to maintain and to be good stewards, if you will, but there are also provisions, just as there is with the lot split, and for someone to request a variance, there's rules and regulations for deviating from the responsibility to maintain wetlands, if you will. I do believe that we're within the regulations. Everything that we've done, be it additional data points, different things like that have been mentioned. We're following what is the requirements and regulations within the city and any of the other reviewing agencies. So we feel that we're doing that. I guess the pitiful part with the reference to the wells not being shown, I do take offense to that, because our own Ohio EPA provided, and it was provided to you all as well, a document that showed the Ohio EPA's concern as they've been contacted, and they provided to us a schematic of all of the known wells in the area. So I feel that that has been adequately addressed to the concerns that have been brought to our attention through the Planning Commission, through the Ohio EPA, and any other agencies. As far as the amount of fill, yes, as it stands right now, there will be some fill brought into the site. If we have opportunity to address that and reduce that amount, I don't know what the exact amount is off the top of my head, but we will address that. As far as, but there is fill. I mean, fill's brought in on projects, everywhere. With regards to this is just my commentary. With regards to 1181, uses adjacent to the site will be safeguarded. Unless safeguarded is defined, I believe that's subjective, and safeguarded is something that has to be looked at individually and with the Planning Commission and the intent of the zoning of the property. Similarly with the harmonious. With regards to the aquifers, That's again a statement made by a professional as far as the area servicing this. If there's smaller areas or areas of other concern, that will come up or can come up at the appropriate time. And I think the other item was addressed, if I took good notes, was monitoring wells. Again, I think we kind of addressed that in your initial question was, are there things that we can do to work to safeguard or at least, identify what's going on? We can look at that. I'm not necessarily going to commit to a specific procedure because I would be stepping outside of my area of expertise and identifying exactly what we would do. But as a professional engineer and speaking upon the things of which I am an expert, and reciting the things of which I have hired other experts, I feel that we can at least work together to come up with an amicable solution that would at least bring to the comfort of the Planning Commission.
If I can interject, to Mr. Clark's point, it is possible to get a baseline of the current well quality and the water quality and then use that as to launch from and be able to refer back to that over X number of years. That can be done.
Yeah, I'm sure it can.
I actually think it was one of the recommendations that was in the report from the Ohio EPA for that to be done so that it could be monitored.
Right.
Yeah, the EPA has recommended to Mr. Clark and the other residents and provided a list of certified testers that they get wells tested so they would have that baseline.
So, but we're EPA and we are asking the residents to do
Yes.
that and put the cost on them to do that?
Correct.
Is that something that can be adjusted? I mean,
What's that?
why should they bear the brunt of that cost?
They own the wells. Because the EPA just saw it as they own the wells, they should provide testing.
But they're not doing any actions to cause harm to the water. It's somebody else who's doing it. So why would they bear the
But EPA is
cost of
saying,
that?
no, it's not known that any harm is being done to wells.
Right, but I mean, I don't want to speak for the residents, but maybe there's a solution to split cost or do something like that. Maybe that could be a discussion of so that they don't have to bear the total cost of that. I mean, I find that completely unfair.
I guess similarly, if I may, I mean.
Are you talking about that same topic or are
Yes.
you going into something else?
Yes, I
when you're
was,
done,
but go ahead.
Mr. Clark wanted to
Sure.
add something.
Well, I was going to talk
specific.
about that same topic.
So, the situation is, Ohio EPA, since I whined, my responsibility because Ohio EPA said they did not have the funding for that analysis.
For the state of Ohio to do the analysis. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I was told.
Mr. Chairman, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Weber, what I'm thinking about may actually address this issue. New soil borings are about to take place, correct? About to be collected?
Correct.
And those are going to relate to the wells, I'm assuming, yes?
No, those are going to relate to the land itself, just the
Okay.
ground itself. They're not going to be related specifically to the wells.
My good idea theory just got shot.
I'm
Sorry, sir.
sorry to be that one.
That's all right.
You wanted to say
Well,
something
I was
else?
just going to say, as we have a 2,100 acre or whatever it was identified, I can't remember exactly area that contributes to the wells, and ours is a small fraction of that. At what point, and this is where I say we have to identify what is the reasonable sample area, because they can test those wells, or you can ask us to pay to test those wells. But then if there's an issue, then there's the assumption that issue came from this project. But if there's plenty of other projects within a 2,100 acre area that are contributing to that, to the wells, so where is it that those are not coming from somewhere else? And so I'm just, those are the concerns, and that's why I say I can't commit. One, I would want my hydrologic engineer professional to address that. But in my earlier statements is, I can't put myself or my client out to take the responsibilities of 2,100 other acres that are contributing, that have been constructed without the scrutiny and data that has been provided here. And that's just what I'm saying.
Sure.
From that perspective.
That's a statement of fact.
Yeah, and it is, and that's what I'm just saying is, so I just want to make sure we can find something that works, but we also have to make sure, as you know, as anyone would want to, the owners want, or the homeowners want to protect themselves from something that you know, we have data that, or we have information that says is not going to be an issue.
Sure.
Just as the same as we want to make sure we protect ourselves against something that may not be even linked to our parcel.
I mean, as one of the points came up before, that since there hasn't been conversation between Skinnell Properties and the homeowners, hopefully our discussion is going to push a dialogue forward so we can all get on the same page, especially them with you.
I do want to say to this, there has been some dialogue. And I will say I have been more than willing and have taken a number of calls from certain member of the audience. And quite frankly, the conversations have stopped because of the dialogue. So we, as a developer and as a developer's representative, have been willing to answer the phone.
Okay.
But you can only take so much.
Sure.
Especially
Understood.
when you're within the regulations. But thank you.
Anything else, Matt?
I think I've addressed everything that I could remember, so.
Well, if you'll have a seat, we'll have the next
Certainly.
person come up, and whoever is signed up next to come up and speak.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mark Sikowski, 2445 Old Mill Road, Twinsburg, Ohio, adjacent to this property. As Matt Weber said, he compared this project as being small. I don't think there's anything small about this project. This thing is basically what, in our eyes, is massive. Maybe it's small on them because they do projects a lot bigger than this, but you know, this is just destroying the whole environment surrounding the area. You know, we all have property and we have wooded lots and everything else like that. All this watershed and everything where they're building their properties is basically stopping the water that's feeding the trees and the vegetation that's behind our properties. You know, which is killing trees and everything else like that. The trees themselves, you know, were originally in forest trees. They weren't out in the line, so they're not used to now this wind that they're getting and everything else. So the back of our properties, now all these trees are being uprooted and they're falling down. 200-year-old trees, you know, they're just basically getting destroyed because of all this, which understandable, but at some point in time, you know, now this is damaging our property and diminishing our property values, which is basically in your code of not diminishing our property values. Another thing I guess to talk about is the wall a little bit. You know, they're going to build a 20-foot tall wall that's going down against Hutchinson's property to hold back their fill that they're going to put up, and then put a building on top of it, 42-foot tall building. So basically from grade that's there now to where the top of the building height is going to be 64.5 feet above what's existing right there now. You know, so that's putting that building way out in the air. You know, we talked about putting trees down below the wall. What about more trees and more above the wall to stop from lights infiltrating through and having to see this? You know, this is the back of our properties. We're looking into wooded lots. Now we have to look at a lighting nightmare where basically the whole thing's going to be lit up. I mean, another stipulation, you know, CVS at the end of the street, when they rebuilt that, the lights shut off there at 10 o'clock at night. I'd like to see something like that where the lights shut off or half the lights shut off. They only need enough just for low voltage security down low, you know, enough that it's not going to destroy the environment, or, you know, we can still enjoy our peace and quiet of what's there. Another thing I'd like to know is, we've asked the question multiple times if this facility is going to be a 24/7 operation or not. We still haven't got an answer on that. I'd like to understand whether or not it's going to be 24/7 or not, and then I'd like some type of noise ordinance put in that after 10 o'clock at night, there can't be any backup alarms on semi-trucks or anything else like that. There can't be any horns, whistles, noise, any type of noise after 10 o'clock at night. A couple other things. you were talking about the driveway, the semi-truck driveway that pulls out on the Old Mill Road. That semi-truck driveway shines right into residents' houses right across from it right now. So basically, if there's semi-trucks pulling in and out of here all night long, you know, they're shining right into the person's windows. You know, that drive should be, really there should be no truck traffic on Old Mill Road. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but there are minutes from 1992 in the Planning Commission, when the Planning Commission was, when Consolidated Plastics first decided to start building Consolidated Plastics that was there. The Planning Commission at that time in 92 told them that if there's any future development behind Consolidated Plastics had to go out to Case West, and there needed to be improvements to that street. So in 92 they thought about that, no truck traffic needed to be on Old Mill Road, and now we're talking about it again, because the truck traffic needs to not go on Old Mill Road. It needs to go out on Darrell Road, whether it's Summit Commerce or if it's Case West. Other than that, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
A 24/7 operation, I mean, I don't have an answer to that because we don't have full tenants. I can't say that someone won't come in and request 24/7 operation, and if we have to come back before the Planning Commission, we would come back before the Planning Commission. I don't think that that's something that we can fully address at this point in time, which is why we haven't, and it's not by avoidance, it's by fact. I can't answer that, I don't know. With regards to stopping water for feeding trees, if I understood that correctly, I mean, we have to control our stormwater management. We contain that within our site. We address watersheds as required by regulations, and it's still going to rain, and I can't say that I know how to answer that other than I don't believe anything will not have water. Noise ordinance, I guess you already have a noise ordinance within the city, if I believe is correct. The one thing that I can say with regards to the facility is set up to where loading docks are in the center. They're facing each other in the buildings, so that noise, if you will, or the sound, is contained to that center section, which is entirely within the I-2 district, and screened and shielded by the buildings, which then would act as the sound buffer to the adjacent areas. As far as the semi shining in, I believe Mr. Cohen had addressed the idea that if we, when we do close on that property, that maybe we can do something to change the point of entry and exit. I guess the exit is more of a concern as it comes out to address the adjacent property. And I can offer this, although this is us working together. We've done this on other projects where a similar situation, where if the homeowner that is concerned is willing, we can do some mounding or planting on their property to protect. Again, it's all whether they're willing. Sure. I have no rights to do that unless an agreement's brought up, but it's something that we would consider, obviously, as being, cautious and caring of the neighborhood. But that is something that we have done on other projects where there was no other way to avoid it, to avoid that light. So I think I've addressed those questions, unless there was one that I missed, or his comments.
Thank you. Lynn, is there anything, do we have any ordinances regarding 24/7 operations in an industrial district? I know we do have noise ordinances.
Right, yeah, there's no specific noise ordinance for an industrial district. And really, the county noise ordinance is probably a stronger ordinance than what the city has in terms of decibel levels. yeah, there's not a lot in our ordinance regarding noise.
But you do, is there an ordinance, or is that the township, the Twinsburg Township?
I think it's a township. I think there's a county ordinance,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah.
And can you also address the legality of permitting and denying access from Old Mill Road?
Okay, right, so we're back to that. Yeah, in 1992, as was pointed out, there was a discussion amongst the Planning Commission in regards to the Cifron building, which was Concord Mills at that time, that if they further developed their property, that their private driveway would need to be converted to a road to serve the rear of their property. But at that time, there was a right-of-way wasn't set aside. There was no public right-of-way platted. There was no real force to it. The intent was there for Concord Mills to provide access to 91 if they developed their property, but there was just no teeth in that motion that was made. There was nothing set aside, and so then properties were sold and transferred and given to the Cleveland Clinic, and other buildings were built and other properties were subdivided. So where we're at now just doesn't allow for that type of access to be made from this site to Darrow Road.
And the legality for us to prohibit them from having access from Old Mill?
I mean, as a property owner with this much frontage on Old Mill Road, they have, that's their public access. There is no other public access. They don't control the private property that would allow for access onto Darrow Road. So the city really cannot deny access to the public right-of-way for this property owner, any more than you could be denied as a residential property owner driveway access onto Old Mill Road. It's just not something that we can legally do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next member.
Matthew Eppley, 2668 Old Mill Road, Twinsburg Township, Ohio. To the honorable people on this committee, the council representative, and Mr. Yates who's in here, I want to inform you all to some history of the property to make sure that you guys are aware of the considerations and what I believe is many small issues resulting in one error along the way. From the homework that I've done, and again, don't hold me to all of this because it's the best that I can do. In 1987, this entire area in question was annexed into the city from the township. In 1992, CM Plastics wanted to build a warehouse building on this property. Some considerations and many concerns were raised for the residents of Old Mill Road. A street was considered to be built of the north side of this property and truck and Route 91 access. However, it was never followed up with and therefore was not built. I would refer all of you to look at the Planning Commission meeting agenda from March 2nd of 1992 and read through that thoroughly. In approximately 2010, before CM Plastics sold the building investment, they broke apart the property and sold several lots, all still identified as I-2. CVS was built on the corner of 91 and Old Mill Road, and now we're on the cusp of Old Mill Road becoming a poor blend of commercial and residential properties. Through this process, my vocabulary is increasing significantly with words like hydrology and hydrogeology. Again, making this committee fully aware that we on Old Mill Road are well and spring water fed, as well as use septic systems. My concerns are obvious along the way with the mistakes to protect the surrounding residents were made. Old Mill Road is a residential street, now with, as of I guess today, 3 homes in the city. I can't believe through all the development throughout Twinsburg's growth over the past 20 to 30 years, there's not more protection for the residents to ensure the harmonious relationship between individual and industrial properties. However, after looking at all of the zoning maps in the city, there are so few places that residential and industrial properties border that maybe it just hasn't been a problem until this time. I understand we live south of the highway and are a part of a small minority of residents in this geographic location, but we do need your help. I truly believe this was not supposed to happen for a myriad of reasons. I also believe with our water and sewage being on our own properties and having the potential for this project to significantly damage those resources of ours, your diligence and importance to follow up all of the charters and rules are quite important. Mr. Kleinman, thank you for your comments earlier. Those are spot on. I really do appreciate it. A question that I have initially with the 2365 property being under contract, does the plan change at all? Can you, with regards to the water, can you tell exactly where the fissures for our water wells are feed from underground, so that way we can tell if our wells are going to be impacted by the development of this building? Will this allow anyone to tap into the well and sewer provided at no cost to the residents with regards to the water line being put on the street? The comment was just made of the noise of the docks facing each other. That's gonna, being a previous truck driver, that's going to echo a lot and create a sound tunnel facing the street, facing other residences. And last, and if this is any takeaway from this, for future development, why is land and tree clearing allowed, permitted before final plan is approved? We've been staring at what's been a cut down lot now for over a year. And I would like to show you, those of you that haven't been there yet, what that looks like. This is a picture of Old Mill Road, all the trees on it. This is a current picture of Old Mill Road and what all the trees look like on it previous to this. Sorry, the contrast on the printer went to hell, but this is what it looks like now. There's very, very few trees left. And if the final site plan isn't approved yet, why did all the trees need to be taken down? If we're going, why couldn't trees have been left? And again, something we can't go back on at this point, just for future reference for down the road. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate all the help. And please review the documentations from the 90s and from the mid 2000s regarding this property.
Michael, go ahead.
So this is a question I'm going to continuously ask both sides, because of those of you who have spoke to, I'm very much, the arguments need to be based in authority. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Thank you. As I've told folks who've had conversations with me about this, in my mind, everything's tied to authority. What we have as planning commission, what we're empowered and supposed to do. There's been a lot of discussion on both sides going to the response to questions about health, safety, and general welfare, and specifically to 1181.07 sub C, sub 3's issue about harmonious groupings. So, and it also goes to harmonious relationships to existing and proposed uses on adjacent property. So this is going to be my specific question for both sides as public comment continues this evening. What existing and proposed uses are going to be disharmonized by this development? And contra to the other side, how will it not? You all are both sides tracking what I'm saying? That's the specific question I have. How will it provide for the harmonious groupings of buildings within the proposed development, as well as harmonious relationships to existing and proposed uses on adjacent property? So for one side, they're going to say it does. Another side, they're going to say it doesn't. I'm assuming you sit within the it doesn't, correct?
Correct.
How?
Old Mill Road currently does not have the substantial truck traffic on it, if very minimal, and this is going to change that. It's going to change it from a neighborhood until an industrial area. Old Mill Road currently has 0 commercial driveways on Old Mill Road other than the gas station at the corner, which I don't know if you could actually say, I don't know if it's address to Old Mill or address to 91, but it is the corner. I don't think I'm intelligent enough to answer that question thoroughly.
It's okay.
But I can honestly say that it will change the dynamic of Old Mill Road from a residential street.
Is your property an adjacent property?
No, it is not.
Okay.
My kids cross the street. My kids have to get on the school bus on the street every morning. I don't want 80,000 pounds of truck trying to stop on a snowy, cold winter day and frankly injuring them or worse.
Understood.
Is your property across the street from?
My property is, my proximate,
I'm sorry? Across the street? So
my
you're down the
property is
street.
approximately approximately a quarter of a mile away from this.
Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Weber?
I really didn't have any questions for you
Applause.
I don't either.
And I don't
understand.
take offense by it either. So I just I've been on the other side as a homeowner myself. I think a lot of these things, Mr. Eppley, I believe it was, were more addressing to you all. I think, Mr. Walker, if I may address your question in regards to harmonious. I guess I look at it and say, the neighborhood is defined by what the city has deemed the zoning. And since 1987, the property was annexed into the city and zoned according to what the neighborhood was to be defined by that zoning. As I look at it, we've got I-2. The neighborhood is I-2 and residential. I don't know that it's defined anywhere in the zoning the code, the zoning and the code requirements as to what defines harmonious, but for possibly the environmental assessment to determine what is currently there to remain as harmonious as it can. And so I would say that, we are harmonious. We're I-2 in a neighborhood that has both I-2 and residential. Some zoning codes provide for a harmonious transition. They go from R2 or residential of some sorts to maybe R2 multifamily to R6 apartments to commercial to industrial. And the harmony is that there's a defined transition between those. This is defined by I-2 and residential. And so from my perspective, we're within the code of I-2. There's no requirements other than lighting, which we've adhered to, landscaping, which we've adhered to, and doing what we can to make sure we stick with that and address any other concerns that we can that are concerns of the neighbors.
Sure. And I track what you're saying, and this is my follow-up question. And I completely recognize where you're coming from with regard to the I-2 zoning in place. And there's the ideal of how zoning should work and how it should apply. Of course, I was going to say the same thing to Mr. Clark about a FLEA. Thiokol, I think, did the same thing with the Challenger, and we saw how that turned out. So I don't always completely trust the assessments. Bad science joke. But the code does specifically say harmonious relationships to existing and proposed uses on adjacent property. So while I 100% understand what you're saying with regard to I-2, and we do go back in time when the zoning was in place, you still have a provision that we have to make a determination based on using those specific elements of the code. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, it's like I've got plain language in front of me that says I have to consider that. So that's where the struggle comes from. And just as I'm asking the other side, and I don't need to say the other side, concerned residents who have, I want them to say, where does this meet the elements here that I have to consider? I mean, I'm looking at the responses to questions. There's a line that says, considering all three, I forgot what the document was, responses to, let's see the header on this document. But it says, considering all three areas within a citywide framework is at the core of local sustainability concerns. Narrowing the focus of these efforts to a single private development overlooks the intent of the proposed policy document. I disagree with that. I mean, one person who has significant concerns, and I've got to look from that perspective as a commissioner. So this is why I asked the question I did earlier. You don't have to go to the other side at all. I think there's some utility to doing so. And put aside the fact that you've got two people with hydrology training as professionals from degree and experience, I'd highly encourage some of this dialogue to occur. So that's not so much a question, but as a statement, but to give you a guidance of how I'm kind of looking at this as the new guy.
Certainly, appreciate that.
Lynn, did you have anything to share based on the questions that came
I
up?
can add that in regard to at least the speed limits, Summit County has agreed to reducing the speed on the township side of the boundary to 35 miles per hour to match. Okay, but that's one option, is the speed can be reduced to 35 miles per hour. The project will include pedestrian facilities for the width of the project site, and the project site adjacent to CVS will have sidewalk. The site that is south of the Cifron building, when that is developed, will also require sidewalk. So there will be a sidewalk provision for the distance from Jarrow Road to the Project Gumbo site, as well, again, as the reduction in speed limit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jamie DeFabio, 7937 Megan Meadow Drive. I know many of you. I wasn't intending on speaking today. Mr. Walker asked a question, and Ms. Mutter stated a comment that they have a right to come out onto Old Mill Road. Just because they have a right does not make it right. How is it going to impact the neighbors? Property value. Would you like to move across the street from a 500,000 square foot facility with 76 truck bays, trucks coming in and out all day long? Would you like 400 parking spaces with cars coming in all day long? Not 100 parking spaces with cars coming in out all day long. It'll make it virtually impossible for these people to get the property value out of their homes if they go to sell, if the truck traffic comes out onto Old Mill Road. You know you wouldn't like it, you wouldn't like it, you wouldn't like it. None of us would like it. Not only that, you're going to have the truck braking, and that's going to be making sound going in and out all day long. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is you got the turnpike coming in off of 480. The GPS is going to bring them right down 480, get off at Frost Road, come up Aurora Hudson, come up Ravenna. How are you going to prevent trucks from going up Old Mill Road from that direction? Do I have to have a sheriff posted there all day long citing these trucks? The Cornerstone property impacts the heights. The GPS brings those trucks up Haddon Road because it doesn't know those roads through the heights are dead end. Those trucks pull up all those roads in the heights, and they have to back out of them streets because the GPS brought them that way. It's going to do the same thing with them coming off of the turnpike. We do not need truck traffic on Old Mill Road. This project needs to be re-examined, and the traffic has to be brought out onto 91 regardless. There has to be a way figured out. Thank you.
Councilman DeFabio, do you have trustee, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Field promotion. Maybe, I don't know, field demotion. Do you have concerns with regard to water courses or the wells or anything of that nature?
I do. I think you're going to put an impervious surface where the water's not going to be able to penetrate over 32 acres, and it's going to affect the water. It's going to be rediverted. I think there has to be more testing. I think it has to be a more thorough hydrogeological study. I don't think it's been done to this point. I think it's been a vague study.
I'm sorry, what type of study?
A vague. Minimal. Any other questions? Thank you.
I appreciate the comments. Don't believe it's a fake study, as I would think Mr. Munoz.
He said vague.
He said vague, sir.
Wait, what did you say?
Vague.
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 Certainly didn't sound that, so I apologize. I take that back. I take that back. I don't think it was a vague.
That's why I questioned you when you said it first, because that's what I thought you said.
That's okay. That's okay. With regard, some of the things that I guess I'm just asking, and I understand everyone here is offering opinions with regards to traffic, and everyone is offering opinions with regards to the water wells, but they are offering opinions, and we do have traffic impact studies that are done by professionals, that have been reviewed by professionals, that have been reviewed by both the county on behalf of the township and by the city, and I think those studies have shown that and presented to you the results. So I think from that perspective, that's what we're required to do as professionals and as developers, is to provide that data and that information from a professional standpoint. I won't stand up here and say that I'm the expert on traffic, as that is, again, not my area of expertise, but that has been presented in our reports, and same with the hydrologic study that has been referenced. So just as we move forward, just with those two being brought up, and I think what brought me up was the idea that it was a fake study, so I apologize. It was a vague study, and but to that, I just want to keep that in mind, that we have provided you with professional information.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute recess to utilize the restrooms, and then we'll come back and you can start us off. Thank you. So at 8:55, we'll come back and adjourn. Thank you.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Gentlemen, this is a public forum, sir.
Guys,
This
I'm
is
gonna put on
this is a
Lieutenant
pub
Commander
this is a
Walker
public
hat.
forum, so we need to have some kind of decorum.
Keep it civil.
Well, the fact that you just went up here and told the chairman of our commission that you don't want to wait 5 minutes is probably not a great way to start off your commentary. So let's. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry.
Just apologize to him. That's me.
I think you see why my conversations have stopped. Thank you, David.
I think it's moot until there's an action.
We will come back and adjourn here at 9:02, a little bit more than what we said, but thank you everybody for that short intermission. Let's roll on with public participation. Come forward, name and address, please.
Steve Hummel, 2500 Old Mill Road, Hudson, Ohio, 44236.
I apologize to the people here about my brusqueness earlier. Everybody's emotional about this, just like the issue with the supposed harassment towards the people that wanted to move in. People are upset because of what's going on. There was no ill intent there. It's just our concern. And I'll leave it at that, for that. So I hear that the engineering plans, these plans that I've been looking at, have been approved by the city engineers. I have some specific questions on those plans, but before I get to that, I know that you guys have setbacks, and this is basically what they do. They put that building.
Mr. Hummel, grab them. Oh, okay. If you want to just come forward, yeah.
We'll go right up to the setback. They say we can do this, and of course you can do that. Just like I can do a lot of things, but should I do it? That's the question. That's the ethics and morality about people. We can do a lot of things. I can steal the candy from a baby. But, so they meet their zoning in a lot of respects, I guess. Go right up to the line, go right around Campbell, you know, drain some of their property to Campbell, which is against the ordinance, to get the truck driveway, and they got drainage flowing towards the Campbells, but maybe they're buying them out, I don't know. So anyways, but they meet those ordinances, those simple ordinances, but prior to those ordinances, like Michael Walker suggested and talked about, we have these environmental issues that kind of maybe supersede it. In other words, you can do the maximum height, you can do the minimum setback, you can do all that. You can just push it out there, but you know, what about the environmental concerns? That might like whittle away at some of those things. If you would look at the land as a piece of land and not just a piece of something that you could put 20 feet of fill in, like you're setting a concrete form around that whole thing and filling it with rubble from Cornerstone or wherever you're going to get that stuff, and then blocking the creeks off. So I have an intimate relationship with surface hydrology, and this issue about filling the creeks, whatever. I don't want to go there. It's obvious. They're directing all this historic watershed that goes right down the middle through what was Wetland A and feeds these creeks. And downstream even from this was Kevin Brown's. He's at a 20-foot waterfall back there where all the kids from Shaker Day Camp went. I heard it's drop dead gorgeous. I've never been back there. What a site there. What an ecological feature that wasn't mentioned in that assessment. Wasn't mentioned. None of that was mentioned. They talked about the footprint of their property, but the assessment should have reached out to the whole vicinity, which it did not. So I feel that it was an incomplete assessment. For whatever reasons, it wasn't complete. They didn't mention wells in their original assessment. So those things being said, some of the flora and fauna that have the ability to live down in that area, because when you go there, some of the guys have been to that site, it drops off drastically. Beautiful sandstone outcroppings, a lot of rare fauna and flora back in there. And what happens when you divert that whole watershed for a 2-year storm event, you're going to divert 1 million gallons from this watershed for one event. When people say, water, we control our stormwater. Well, controlling stormwater is just when you make it such, like when you put something like this here. That's when you control stormwater. But when you have a harmonious environment, you don't worry about that so much. It can handle it. It takes care of it. We talk about the water. What does it do to feed the trees? It does a lot of things. But what it also has is a cooling effect on this whole area, which is wooded and low. You know how hemlocks grow in them cool wooded areas. The water has a cooling effect on that. You take away the upstream watershed, they're going to lose that cooling effect. Nobody talked about that. Those are all things that if you don't understand your environment that you live in, you don't see that at all. You don't even think about that. But these are all the little things that they step out. The lighting, the insects won't breed. We won't have that. All these things. And they talk about in 1175, I feel that there's a violation of every single one of those in what they've done. And I'm not going to get into it. I can do that later. And I will do it later if I need be. But there's a violation just about in every single one of those. And so I'll go from there with that. And so that's that for a minute. The other thing we're talking about is that fill. That 20 foot of fill, that is not harmonious. And it's a huge amount of fill. And we talked to the guy at the EPA today, and he's saying they said most of that's going to be cut from the site. Now, I looked at the grading plan, and I'm the guy who brought up the issue with the fill. I didn't hear from anybody. When I did landfill design, we always did cut fill. All the time we looked at cut fill. We needed to. It was very important. I look at this grading plan, and if I had a cross-section of this plan, I would have saw right away that there was a huge amount cut and fill. If I would have done cross-sectional work and looked at it and did a cross-section through Hutchinson's garage and then saw the berm in the road, and you would have seen that in perspective and conceptualized that, you would have said, oh my God, you don't see that here. But I know how to do a grading plan, so I know that back here you're looking at 20 foot of fill. I know right here where it meets Hutchinson's, you're at 1060 at the bed. Hutchinson's floor is at 1062. The floor elevation 1083. Existing ground 1073. That's 10 feet of fill right there in the high part of that drainage. And then you go another 10 feet up with fill, and then you put a 45-foot building. Wait a minute here. What I would say is, you better judge the height of your building by the existing terrain. What kind of deal is this? I could put 100 foot of fill according to zoning. According to zoning, I could stick 100 foot of fill in there and put a 50-foot building. But when we did landfill design, we had to meet, part of the issue with height requirements is to meet the surroundings. In Pennsylvania, there were some rolling hills. Elevation, mountains, 3,000 feet. We couldn't put a 5,000-foot landfill in there. We had to stick to the terrain, the harmoniousness. And this is the same issue. It's the same point we're making. So that is extreme. And anybody with the mind in their head knows what they're trying to present here is extreme, in my opinion. You look at the Campbell's house, which it's under contract, don't mean it's sold, just means it's under contract.
Mr. Hummel.
Huh?
Please direct toward us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had the mic here and...
Look at me.
Oh, okay, I will, Michael. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Anyways, the Campbell's house has 2 basins around it. And I kind of wanted to get to that issue because what that issue brings about is the original fill permit. If you look closely at that fill permit, Army Corps allowed them to do quite a bit of filling. But if you look, there's a couple wetlands they did not allow them to fill. In part because they were touching the Hutchinsons and they were touching the Campbells. So when EPA recommended that basin in the back, they didn't want 2 up in the front for various reasons. But now, these wetlands are gone, and they're on the grading plan here. They're on limited grading. They show these not to be touched. On this limited grading plan right here, it's shown. Yet from limited grading, all of a sudden they're filled, and there's a parking lot over them. So what's that basin? Is that like in lieu of the wetland when they weren't supposed to be up front? I don't know. All I know is what I look at from the fill permit. Other issue with the fill permit is they wanted to mitigate 295 linear feet of the 1,000 or so feet that they're wanting to fill with rubble. Right there, where is it? I can't find it. I don't see it. I don't see no mitigated stream on there. So that was something that was recommended and it's not there. These are specific things I'm talking about for the design of this project that should have been there, that are not there. And if the city engineer approved it without these things in there, I don't know how. Honestly, don't know how. Now I'm going to get to something else. I know. Thank you. I'm going to talk about some of the structures for the stormwater and how they even, how they actually did the modeling of the stormwater itself. They actually routed the upstream watershed. The red is gumbo, 30 acres of pavement. The green is the upstream, not their property, but that green upstream watershed, that drained through the site to the Hutchinsons and the Clarks, and so that what they're doing there, they're you know, why are you concerning yourself with the upstream watershed? Why? Because they want to fill the whole site and put 2,000-foot buildings on the site. This is a huge constraint. This creek that runs across that carries the surface water from this spot to this original spot, and that is the watershed for this. They're taking 30 acres of the watershed that went here and diverting it to a watershed that only took about 7 acres originally. Up front here, where the yellow line is, that's the amount of watershed that ever drained off of their site. But now they're taking everything and draining it off of their site. The county doesn't allow for that unless under extreme circumstance. And according to the way I read the stormwater codes, they're basically mimicking and parroting the Summit County Drainage Manual. They don't come right out and say it, which the zoning should change that and put that in. Maybe it leaves them some wiggle room. I don't know. But anyway, getting back to the design. The method that's used is called TR20. This is the book that I learned it in. Applied Hydrology and Sedimentology of Disturbed Areas. My major professor wrote this book. We did a lot in the mining industry at the University of Kentucky. My research was mathematically designing sidewall failure and gullies. I built a 40-foot channel so we could do stochastic modeling. Okay, so TR20's in here, but it has some limitations. And the limitations with the TR20 model are, it works for a watershed, but you have to be very careful on how you model that watershed. And I brought it up to you guys at that last meeting, I think, when I talked about time of concentration and curve numbers. He's conflating all these things, whoever did this. This watershed, he's lumped it all together because what they're trying to do is divert all the flow. Okay, I get what he's trying to do. But why would you run through your basin? Because they don't got nowhere else to take it, maybe. But he could have taken it to the back without putting it through his basin. But he didn't, so he routed it. But what he should have done is that green area I showed you, that should have been a whole separate node. It should not have been linked in with this. In other words, he lumped the curve numbers together. This red, curve number 98, that means hit, runoff. Hits, runs off. Piping underneath it. Probably about a 6, at the most, 10-minute time of concentration. I figured 6. That means the time it takes hydraulically to get from the furthest point on the watershed over. He worked all this into it, and he changed that 6-minute time of concentration to 43 minutes. It's a completely different land use. You would never model with TR20 lumping this all together. That completely messes up the way that the model works. It's a fine model if you meet the limitations as a designer. But when you don't, you get erroneous results. So I went ahead and modeled it, roughly. I didn't run the hydrographs through, but some of the key things that they have to base this plan on are peak flow rate. And the peak flow rate is the amount of flow that comes off of that site for a given storm event. And I went ahead and looked at it, and I looked at his, and I looked how he got it, and I compared it to the equations that are used here, and they're very favorable, within 0.5%. The computer program probably uses a logarithmic equation. I just used the chart. Same difference. So apples to apples is what I'm getting at with this. What I ended up with here was he's constrained. He's got to meet a 50-year storm coming out the back end there, and that means he's got to control the 50-year post-storm to 2-year pre-development. For his 50-year storm, 116 cubic feet per second. He just barely makes that work with his outlet structure, and that's how you determine it. The hydrograph comes in, you got the outlet structure, he's got the storage of the basin, and his storage meets the storage that I figured out because of the time of concentration. It works out pretty much close to the same. So even though I just modeled this, don't look at all the smoke and mirrors. What we're worried about here, folks, is the red. That's what I'm concerned about for modeling, not the green, changing the curve number. You know, that was a drastic change in this. What I'm saying here, though, is the peak flow rates for a 5-year storm, given what I did in the modeling, equaled what his did, whoever did it, for a 100-year storm. The 100-year storm takes the flow from the emergency spillway. That's the only thing that should be crossing that spillway. According to what I just calculated, looks to me like anything over a 5-year storm is going to be going and breaching that spillway. It's not designed for that. As a matter of fact, I wanted to bring it up because it's right on the edge of Kevin Brown's property. And Chet Mastor and Linda there, and the way they got that laid in there, I don't see much about the design of it, other than the fact that's where it's going to go through. Okay? You see it right in the corner. I don't see any further grading to stabilize that. I don't see anything in the plans about stabilizing the toe of that so you don't get scour when you're getting all these storm events going through there. And what it looks to me like is it's going to follow the path of least resistance there, and it's going to go through Kevin's land. And I don't know if he offered them a stormwater easement or not. But that's how I look at it from these plans, because I know where the grading divide lays according to this, and that's how he designed, whoever did it designed it to look at that. This is all he's got, same as I got. So I'm concerned about the basin itself. And also I'm concerned about this bowel retention issue back there. Why in the world would you put a bioretention basin back in there? What are you trying to meet some kind of zoning that they have here? The whole point of this clay liner was not to do that. Not to let percolation go through. What's this? Why is it there? All it drains is a part of the parking lot. It's insignificant. It's almost like, what is this doing there? It's not a forebay. It's a bioretention. The exact thing that we argue with the EPA not to have happen, infiltration. You got it right next to the big basin that has very little that they're talking about with what kind of clay they're going to use to line this. It's an afterthought in their plans. They don't really mention much about it. I'm looking at these, are these final plans? I think they're final plans. What kind of clay? Where are you going to get it? From Cifron, I see they bought a product to line their pond. It says clay. What, are you going to get it from the site? That's a sandy clay. It may not do the job. So insignificant amount of information on that, I feel. The pond itself, the basin, is supposed to be designed to the agricultural USDA standards. Handbook 560. Nowhere in here, I see slight mention about anti-seep collars, but not on the plans for the final product here. You know, packing clay around the pipe gives you a flow path. You don't pack a foot of clay around the pipe and think that's an anti-seep collar. That's not the purpose of it. What he's doing is on the interface of the pipe, if you pack clay around it, you give a flow path between them. That's when you're going to get piping and scour and you're going to start getting failure. Anti-seep collars go around the pipe and they go out so the flow path goes around it. And there's methods to size them. And for this particular basin, it would take 2 of them, 10 foot wide, 6.5 foot tall for that size pipe, which according to my calculations, it might be a bit small. I'm not sure. He's in a jam though because he's got to make sure that he can meet those 2-year requirements according to the design. So it's tricky to design a basin, not easy, especially when you got 30 acres of pavement. And I know that his pipe network works by the rationale method, so I can assume that I can use pipe flow to get a low time of concentration because you don't got head above your pipes. You got it coming. There's no, you're not using the bait. In other words, you're not using the pavement as a retention area because the head over the manholes, the inlets are filling up, according to what I looked at for his work. So anyways, that goes to that. Basins in the front, I don't know. There was never any real watershed pre-development to the ditch for the county road. But he's got some coming down there. So these are all issues that I have for specific things. The other thing we've been talking about the groundwater. We've been talking about lining the pond. We've been talking about all these things. But what we haven't talked about is what you're going to do is set the footers right on the bedrock. That's the plan. They're going to set them footers. They might have to bust some of the bedrock to set them. That's how they're going to get their site. They're going to put clean fill in the inside probably. But there's an awful lot of fill. What are they doing with the tree stumps there? Nobody makes mention of cutting the stumps out. I don't know where the stumps are going. When we did landfill design, you didn't just bury them in one of these low places and put 20 foot of fill over them. So where's the talk about stump removal off the site? Because that's going to lead to subsidence, and it's going to lead to more areas for groundwater to percolate through. Getting back to that one issue, though, the issue I was talking about going to that bedrock and maybe probably busting some of it up, but they're going to be setting that storm sewer basically there. They might have to get in a little lower and crack the bedrock to set their piping. Okay, so there's the incidental leakage that nobody's talked about. In the distribution system, the pond, a lot of it won't migrate through and it'll run down into Kevin's property, down to Waterfall Lake, down to the waterfall. Or it won't get there because he's actually diverting the flow. That's the point. The point is, yeah, it's just going to move on out. But we've got this issue here, cracking the bedrock. Storm sewers aren't watertight. It's not like a sanitary line. Nobody addressed that. I didn't see that from Hydrosphere. I didn't see it in his report. It's something I would have brought up. So that's with that. The wetlands I brought up, wetland B and D, I don't know if they're allowed to fill those. No mitigation on the stream, the 200 linear feet. Got that. Mentioned violations, high slopes, line grading, Campbell. base design control. Bear with me. Oh, force main. We're talking about this main. We're all worried in the township because we're concerned about development permeating down Old Mill Road. Once you start running sewer down there, what's going to happen next? Now, I saw a memo from one of the city officials about things that needed to happen. We were talking about force main in a public right of way. A private force main. Is it a private force main? What are we doing here with this force main? Because me personally, I don't know about the rest of you folks, I don't want sewer coming down the road. I don't want the ability for another development on the south side of the road to be able to buy out like Skinnell's trying to do with Campbell, give them a good money, good offer. God, everybody comes in last spring and what do they see? Trees falling over here, and then in the local paper, 200 apartments going in over here, and the people are saying to themselves, this is where we used to live? At that time, the guy across the street, I know it's township news, but I feel that it's interlinked. Just purposefully or not, I can't say. But this developer hounded the residents on the south side of Old Mill to sell so he could get access onto Old Mill and get into that property back by Minahans. Because they're constrained there. Just like this site is constrained environmentally to do what they're doing. Hey, it used to be zoned residential when it was in the township. In the 80s, it was residential. The fellow who owned Concord Mills or CP Plastic annexed in to the chagrin of the people on Old Mill, put it before the vote of the people that live on the north side of town, that just thought it was another industrial park because they just thought, they didn't think, whatever, and I'm not knocking them for it. But it happened. Was it right? No. And were any provisions put in? Like in the comprehensive plan now, there's one other industrial site that touches up on residential, and they make mention of it on Ravenna Road. And it's like, no, because it's within the site of residence, that shouldn't really be used for that. It's a smaller site. They couldn't do anything of this magnitude with these kind of buildings. And yet this wasn't brought up. Where this is a much larger encroachment, I would say. It's an encroachment into our neighborhood. Cifron was one thing, and the Planning Commission in 1992 had the foresight to say, if you ever split this lot, that's what it was, a lot split. Not that if you developed it, if you ever lot split, you have to make sure that upon the purchase of that a road gets dedicated. So, I mean, yeah, it's our fault. We live in an industrial area, but, you know, a lot of these folks have been here 50 and 60 years. It wasn't that way. And all we ask for is a little bit of respect. And my property is a conservation easement, and I've had a lot of more damage from deer. Habitat have been relocated because of this. My property gives an intrinsic value to everybody that surrounds me. Some peace of mind going up Old Mill. Even though we got to scoot over to the white line when the semi comes the other way. Even though we got to put up with 45 miles an hour, which is fine by us. It's dangerous. Oh, so now we'll throw it down to 35. Oh, thanks for the bone. I'm sorry. I don't like it. This is not anywhere harmonious with how we live. There are things that need to be addressed, in my opinion, which is not much, but I do the best I can. You know, I do this for my friends, the friends that can't answer to this. I do this because I understand this somewhat intimately. There's people that are better and understand it more, but I'm pretty perceptive. You know what? Like I told you guys before, this is 10 pounds of industry in a 6-pound sack. They don't need to come out onto Old Mill. This could happen. Maybe it takes a legal action for it to happen. Who knows? Maybe that's what it's going to take to get this stuff through Cifron. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but maybe that's what it takes. Maybe it's going to take something like that. We're asking for a little bit of cooperation here to make our life so that it doesn't go from a pretty enjoyable to just guys eating Christmas dinner. Now it's a 24/7 facility. Trying to sit there and have dinner, trucks coming down. Come on, man. noise, lights. When it's nighttime, put out the lights. We shouldn't be able to look at, and it's just me harping now, shouldn't be able to look down from a satellite and have the whole world lit up. You know, there's been plenty of studies now about that. And up in Minnesota, it's not that bad, is it, Kevin? That's right. Well, I thought you had a place up there. I didn't know. But anyways, down here, when it's nighttime, put out the lights. It's always been told to me that way, and I believe in it. There have been a lot of studies that have been done where it's not good for your health. And you know what? That's public health and safety. Well, let's look into some studies instead of poo-pooing it away. And the other thing I just want to bring up real quick, and I'll let it all go at this point, was that chapter 1103.11. It's the Environmental Commission. And according to that zoning code, that they had a right to make some kind of a response here before this even got started, really. You know, to make an assessment, to give an opinion. According to what I understand, they really didn't know about this until the first time Lynn came in about a month and a half ago or whatever. Now, wait a minute here. This has been going on behind closed doors for 3 years. Or whatever you want to call it. 2018, they were doing these studies. But the Environmental Commission didn't know. If the Environmental Commission would have known, and we would have put these issues here with environmental assessment and really looked into them and really been thoughtful about it, maybe half these trees would have still been up and Hutchinson's wouldn't have wind-thrown trees because they went right to the edge. They didn't leave vanguard trees are important in a woodlot. You know, the vanguards are the ones that are low and stocky and take the load of the wind. They went right to the edge. You know what? I can do things, but should I? I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you.
A lot of information there. Thank you, Mr. Hummel. The stormwater management was designed in accordance with the current Ohio EPA regulations, current city of Twinsburg requirements. Bioretention that was proclaimed to be foolish was at the recommendation of the Ohio EPA, who was held in such high regard in those previous statements. That was at their request, their requirement. There will be no public sewer. This is not a public sewer project. It's a private force main, because there is no opportunity for sewer to be extended down Old Mill Road unless someone were to want to put in a public pump station and service the area, which is not the intent. I appreciate the confirmation that apparently our pond barely works, but it works because it's designed within accordance with the code. I'm not going to get into any of the real details. Anti-seep collars, we can go back and forth. It again meets the Ohio Rainwater and Land Development Manual, the Ohio EPA's requirements, anti-seep collars. If it'll make somebody feel better, we can make them a little bit larger. At that point, I'll leave it to you guys to ask me some questions, as I may not have absorbed everything that was fully presented there.
Thank you. I don't know if this is a question for you or Lynn, or maybe it might be for the engineer. The comment made by Mr. Hummel regarding a filling of wetlands and streams that are not supposed to be filled from his comment. Can you?
We have an approved limited grading plan that is in accordance with the wetland fill permit. On that, once we have the planning commission, in order to execute that plan, we have to have a planning commission approved plan to execute the limited grading plan. As part of that, we have an application in with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and EPA in preparation to address the other streams and the wetlands that are on the site. But we do not, as far as we cannot fill wetlands on somebody else's property.
So are there wetlands that are supposed to remain, or there's some that are currently shown as remaining but may not be there based on the final approval of planning commission? Is that,
No, the planning commission, if I understand your question, the planning commission is reviewing the plan for the final development.
Right.
And we have an approved limited grading plan that addresses the allowable wetlands to be filled within the parcel. We have another application prepared for the Army Corps and the EPA to address the other remaining streams and wetlands within the facility. And it's a twofold process.
Okay.
So there's, sorry for seeing confused. There are current applications with OEPA or US EPA and Corps?
The Army Corps, we have prepared Army Corps wetland permit applications to continue the process for additional wetland fills that are not on the limited, that are on the limited grading plan.
Those 404 reviews right now, or what do you know?
Yeah, do you remember? I don't remember. Our wetland consultant is actually handling those.
Okay.
And I don't remember if they're 404 or 402, what the specific numbers. Yeah, I think it's 404.
Any questions, comments? Lynn, anything else to address any of the?
Yeah, I sort of lost track. That was a lot.
Was there any environmental commission, or was environmental
The Environmental Commission wasn't asked to review this. The expertise on Environmental Commission maybe hasn't been there in the past, and so it hasn't been protocol for site plans to go to Planning Commission.
Not Planning Commission,
to Environmental Commission. I think that option's always there with the reg, that if they're asked to be drawn into the process, they can be, but it's not required.
Can I ask for Mr. Hummel to come back up to the podium? Because I'd like to ask him a question to make sure I understand and I was following what he was saying. Can I do that? Would you mind coming back up? On one of the drawings, you were pointing out wetlands that are, I guess, going to be paved over. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you had said that previously the EPA said that they couldn't be paved over. Did I understand that?
No. The way I'm reading the jurisdictional fill permits from the Army Corps, they allowed this CEC or whoever is doing this for him is they took a couple bites at the apple with the fill permit. The one was back in 2019, I believe, and at that point they allowed them to, there was quite a few isolated wetlands on this site, scattered about, and they let them fill, I think, 0.42 or 0.43 acres of those. But there are some there at that time that they didn't fill. They didn't allow them to fill. They weren't asked to fill. They didn't fill. So then then on the second bite in 2019, they asked to fill some more, but like the ones around Campbell's and Hutchinson's, there's 2 isolated wetlands.
I guess, I'm
You know
sorry.
what I mean?
I'm
And
sorry
that
to
one,
interrupt,
they
but
once had,
on the property that they own, did I understand you correctly in saying that there are wetlands that were not approved to be filled?
yes.
And it was the
I
EPA?
don't know if they, well, Army Corps of Engineers.
Army Corps. And is that something that you guys are addressing with the Army Corps of Engineers to have filled?
Correct.
Okay, so that right now is a question mark. Is that what we're saying?
It was the early.
Yeah, it's a process,
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And then the main channel through there, that was the third bite of the apple they took. When they came in and clear cut, and I don't want to be redundant about some of this, and I wasn't really, but the riparian zones are very important to watershed management. Of course, that's what filters the pollutants. That main channel that came through there, and they have riparian zone code in the city. They don't sometimes really quantify it, but they say any riparian zone shall be left with natural vegetation on them. They don't say an inch, they don't say a mile, so it's hard to discern. So I always go back to best management, which would be, in this case, the county. The county looks at a watershed. They can tell by the drainage to the watershed and the slope of the watershed, and if there's wetlands in the watershed, how much of a riparian zone to leave along the channel. And in that particular channel, wetland A that goes behind all these folks in the waterfalls over by Kevin, that particular channel with the county's regulations would have probably had at least 60 to 65 feet on either side of the high bank, not the center line, so maybe 150 feet of wood should have been going all the way across back into here under that regulation. Now, they cleared it.
I'm sorry, that's part of the area that was clear cut.
That was part of the area that was clear cut, yeah. Now, the city has a riparian zone code. And the issue I have with the city and their codes and some of these issues, I'm not trying to be mean, but they're more stringent in certain respects to like the House Bill 175 is going through. They have certain issues with the Army Corps. But the city, if you read it favorably, any natural waterway has to be left alone, intact with vegetation. And I didn't bring the thing, but okay, so maybe a developer comes and says, wait a minute, hold on now, that's more stringent than the county or the state, or they could say, well, you decided to do your due diligence, you moved into Twinsburg Town, USA. Or they could say, well, maybe we can provide you a variance.
Sorry to interrupt again, for Lynn. So did we not do due diligence to make sure that they
We considered adopting a riparian setback years ago, but they rejected it. Didn't want to adopt that.
And because it's on city property that, or private property, but within the city, that supersedes something, guidelines that we would have to follow for Summit County?
Correct.
They don't set, the city does not set, they have riparian zone language in their code. You have it. But what you don't do is quantify.
Exactly.
How can you have a riparian zone code and not quantify?
Is that something for council?
Council rejected it already once years ago.
I'm just saying. Now they say, well, trees are gone. Nothing to do. There's no trees. Well, I got that conservation easement. I'm just saying. I know how to remediate a site. We did a lot of strip mining in Kentucky. We know how to remediate sites. I know how to remediate this site.
Okay.
I know how to fix this site. I know how to get the carbon capture back to this site. You know what I mean? And I say, limit the development here that's reasonable. Like I told you guys before, turn that building, put it to the back. If it meets the groundwater studies and there's protection, then we can work on the front, continue to berm that was put in place years ago in front of Cifron, because that was for the protection of the people on Old Mill. We can work with people. And like I told you guys before, you could do a good service with the school system. Because wetland remediation in a riparian zone, it would be a biological study. It would be their outdoor lab. And boy, they could learn a lot from that, because that's important. And that would be a good steward to this area. If you want to be a neighbor and get the kind of work like you got a Cornerstone and things like that, that's how you give back. And so that's just me saying things. But as far as the wetland fill, I think part of the issue with those ones, these isolated wetlands along Campbell and Hutchinson.
Can I interrupt you again, Mr. Hummel?
ahead.
I think I'm stealing other people's
Oh, I'm
time, but I
sorry.
just wanted clarification to make sure I understood
but
where you were going.
The importance of that is since it touched Campbell and Hutchinson's, they couldn't take all the wetland out of there. And that's important because they showed in the grading plan is like they got to work with it. But when you look at the final plan, there's roads over the top of it. So if you approve the final plan here, there's roads over the top.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Someone else who'd like to come forward and speak?
Might have been yesterday.
I'll do my best to be concise and not restate everything. Hello, everyone. My name is Chuck Bonacci. I live at 11327 Heritage Drive, that north end of town. I usually have like an idea of what I'm going to say, but I have to be very guided because I'm talking as a resident. But I'm a resident that happens to serve on the Environmental Commission. And about 2 meetings ago, Lynn Clark came to our meeting and talked about silt fencing and some other things on construction sites relative to stormwater management. And I didn't connect the dots at that meeting. Turns out, I think his comments were specific to this site and the care that the developer had put into that site through their project. And it was kind of an example of a water management challenge that the city might be facing. And then the next meeting, we had 2 Marks and Steve come talk to us. And they talked about things that were important to them relative to this construction site. And we heard all those today. What happens to the water that feeds their stream? What happens to the water that's in the ground that feeds their home? What happens to the quality of life that they enjoy? What about noise, lighting, all that stuff? And when that started to happen, Lynn was kind enough to send us a bunch of documents. So every member of the Environmental Commission got a bunch of documents. And we read them. And all the documents said, there's these forms filed with various entities, with really smart people, that looked at things and basically said, it's within the guidelines of the city plan, the zoning, the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineer, but there's some still concerns, right? Because there's that idea of what Mr. Barr said earlier today, of how a landowner in development could be a good neighbor to those around them. So this is just Chuck talking now. Kudos to what Lynn sent us. It made a lot of sense for the commission, but as an outsider looking in, the water, the stream, it's pretty cool looking when you look at the pictures that they'll share with you, if you go back there and you look at it. So as we're looking at, or they're looking at moving, trading, filling in wetlands, the question really concern is what happens to their nice little stream, right? And then what happens to the things that they enjoyed about their property, okay? And I haven't kind of heard that. I kind of heard that, we got a really smart engineer that did a lot of stuff for us, and I still have concerns, right? Resident still has concerns. Developer says got really smart people solving those concerns. And this is the thing that puts you guys in a tough spot, because they came to the commission I serve on with some concerns, and I think we looked into those. And from a city standpoint, we weren't asked to review. When we were provided information, it looks like the due diligence for the parties asking for stuff was right, but is it the right thing for that area, and what the challenges are going forth? Because they bought a piece of land with intent to do something on it. They knew what they bought, and now somebody might tell them, can't do what you want us to do, what we want to do with our parcel. And that puts a tough spot on it, because you have a neighboring community member talk about what's going to happen to their traffic light and what happens in their community. You have residents in our community talking about what happens to the land that's just adjacent to this, and it all lines up with what's acceptable. And in my heart, I really think a conversation should have taken place that didn't, and maybe there's still time for a conversation to take place. And in a perfect world, it would be great if whatever's built could just be painted that magic color that they use at Disney called Go Away Green. That we could forget about all the damage, all the ill will, all the heartache that this has caused for you guys that live there, and you guys that bought it and tried to do something with it, and then the neighbors in our neighboring community because has to deal with this stuff too. It's a big issue. I don't know the way, but I know that they came to talk to the Environmental Commission and ask for guidance. And it kind of was not necessary because the developer wasn't asking for anything that would be impacting a change from the perspective of the way the codes are written in Twinsburg right now. Okay, does that make sense? And I hope I addressed what's going on from an outsider, because it would stink to. It really would stink. If you ask any of us, would you want to live next to a 20-foot wall and then a 40-foot building on top of that? So the one question I have, if there is a question for the engineer, is does your permitting include like filling in wetlands? What happens to those wetlands that were filled in? Are you essentially buying traded space for wetlands? How does that process work? And can you explain it to us a little bit? That would be the one question.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the standard process with the Army Corps of Engineers that allows for mitigation of wetlands, and you're more or less buying credits to mitigate wetlands in another area, a designated area that says it's under control of a conservancy. Excuse me, that has wetlands available. So if you mitigate 2 acres, you buy, depending on where you're at, you buy 4 acres, and you pay. They then put that money towards preserving wetlands that are of more value according to their standards and requirements. Okay? Not to say that everyone has feels wetlands are valuable if they're adjacent to their home and whatnot, but that's how that works. And that's what we've done.
So here's my follow-up. So you're talking about like wetland bank stuff.
Yeah,
correct?
wetland
okay.
banks.
So you have a limited use permit, and I'm not using that as a precise term of art, but you have permission to do fill regarding a specific portion of wetland on the proposed site project, correct?
That is correct, yes.
You have separate applications pending with Corps and I can't remember if it's OEPA or whoever, but with permitting agencies.
Correct.
So my question is, with the site project as proposed, as it sits in front of us now, can you execute on that plan without these pending permit applications?
Without the continuation of the process, we can't, as it stands right now, we would have to eliminate some of the paved area.
Okay.
We would eliminate.
What do you mean by continuation of process? This process or the
as Mr. Hummel actually even indicated, I believe he indicated, and I think it came up in one of your follow-up questions, was that we've gone through a process. Unfortunately, we've gone through the time of this, we've gone through different administrations. So the rules have changed, and because the rules have changed, applications that we've had and permits that we have to be reevaluated, reassessed, and so we're in that what I would call transition area. We've had conversations.
The federal government.
Okay.
Dealing with this stuff, I understand
exactly
what you're
yes. So it's that's why I say the process by which we're moving through allows us the opportunity to address the items that were not previously addressed in the limited grading plan.
What's the status of the applications with Corps right now? They've been submitted, and I know if Corps has 180 days, they will take 180 days. So where's everything sitting?
I don't believe they've actually, and I'll have to check. Sure. I don't believe they've actually been submitted. They're prepared and waiting for submittal.
Okay.
Based on our limited grading plan and the planning commission.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for all the
process. Oh no, it's valid questions.
Well, I got a question on the stream that was taken out, or that's being diverted. I guess that's a process that you're allowed to do. Is there any ability to pipe that under the waterway and let it continue on the other side of the property, or does that happen?
I mean, I'm trying to think of what you're saying, to take that and...
What I heard was there's a stream which goes through the property that feeds people's properties on the southern side that have waterfalls and stuff off of it that's potentially going to dry up.
Yeah, well, and I don't believe they're going to dry up. I mean, what we have to do is to not get into Mr. Hummel's detail there, but you know, we have watersheds that we have to follow. We have to stay and try and keep water moving in the directions that it is, so that we don't dry up a waterfall or whatnot. We also have to account for all the drainage that comes through our site, which is why that large green area that was referenced as you know, some smoke and mirrors, I think, that we have to do that. I don't want to do that, quite honestly. We actually have a plan for the 96K building that's been approved by Planning Commission. We could break ground on that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow, based on the approvals. That has its own on-site detention facility that then discharges into another conveyance, which then goes to another conveyance, call it a ditch, which then goes through the site. So we kind of have to always look at what's going on upstream. There's Ohio drainage laws, different things like that we have to adhere to. So I don't know, to answer and say, could we ditch it? I could put a pipe in there, but if there's no water getting specifically to it,
it will do.
So our objective in developing that land is to follow the regulations and maintain watersheds, which is why we actually have to have some ponds up in the front, because water does go to the front and it does go to the ditch, and we have to maintain that direction. So I think I understand the question, but to answer it, maybe not in that specific method of piping it, but we do have to work to maintain watersheds so that streams do not dry up. Yeah. Even when we mitigate and fill a wetland, you know, if there's something downstream of that needs to be fed, we have to feed it. I'm working on a project in Macedonia, where, you know, the EPA is working with us and allowing us to discharge roof water just to maintain a specific flow through a wetland area. So there's a lot that goes into it. I wish I could just simplify it, but I think to simplify it is we're doing everything that we can within the regulations to do that, and hopefully it's being good stewards as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hummel, did you have a specific?
As far as, they have to carry the flow through. You can't block somebody's water, but you don't have to retain the flow in your basin. You're not required to retain upstream flow, especially since Matthew says that they're going to retain 96K. I mean, anything that's coming off the Cifron. So the point is, the direction of that flow was to this creek. It went through there. That is historically where the flow that he's talking about went to. So sure, you definitely, by law and by ordinance, you have to convey that flow through. But see, to me, that's a cost issue. You're talking about box culvert under there, or what have you, when it might be easier just to get it into a big pipe and into the back. There's engineering issues involved, but it certainly isn't about, they're not certainly breaking any law by conveying it through. They don't have to retain. So the cost issue there.
Thank you.
Design issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question. Sorry. Going back to what Mr. Hummel was saying before, is it possible to reconfigure the buildings and the parking spots and to move it farther back away from the flow and achieve what you want to achieve and not disturb the natural flow of the wetlands and water?
There's not, and not maintain the plan. No, there's not.
Not enough.
That wasn't my question. Is there a way to redesign it? Certainly not to the degree that you have it now, but is there a way to redesign the project?
Which area?
Since I'm not a design
Oh,
engineer,
that's okay.
civil engineer.
Because we have a number of different.
I was
we have a number of
referencing or
different things
remembering
that
what
come
he was
through it.
saying is push farther, I guess, north. Is that the right thing that you were saying, Steve?
I guess to answer this and be fair and transparent, I'll use what I always will say is this: with enough time and enough money, anything can be designed. The question is, as the last gentleman Chuck said, we also are neighbors and we have a piece of property that has value and has a certain necessity to it, if you will. And certain available opportunities to it. Just as if I were to put a for sale sign on it and the neighbors were to want to buy the property, that's always, it's also for sale because there's a value to everything.
Sure.
So with enough time and money, yeah, to answer your question and be fair, with enough time and money, absolutely there is. The question is within that balance, is there? And I will be very honest and say, no, within that balance, there is not.
Right, because your goal is to get the property up and running to generate cash flow.
Within the required regulations that were allowed by law.
I think what would happen.
Does that make sense?
In order for that to happen, what you're suggesting would require a smaller footprint of building, meaning less buildable area, less revenue generated on the property, less value to the property in doing so.
Yeah, and I'm just wanting to be fair in my answer. I'm just being transparent.
That's just a fact.
Right. Makes sense. So the answer to the question is yes, but it takes time and money to reconfigure it to make the footprint smaller, but it would also have potentially a positive impact on the surrounding community, because then you wouldn't have to divert the stream and do some other.
But the diversion of the stream though is it's still going where we're only diverting it through our site. That's the diversion. It's still going to the same location, so it's
right.
It's
but the
not
potential is that you don't necessarily have. It's not set in stone that it has to be diverted. Correct? At least, according to the current plan, the answer is yes. But according to a redesign of the plan, the answer is no.
The answer is would still be yes.
No, if you were to redesign it to push the setback and push the buildings farther north, and potentially,
but I'm saying the buildings can't go further north.
You would have to redesign and do something that's different than what's currently proposed.
But they can't go further north.
But
we have grade restrictions. We have different restrictions that place them where they're at. So it's a matter of we have to trade which you have to have.
You'd have to make a different building. It would be a completely different footprint, if I'm understanding correct.
Oh, it would potentially be. Yeah, it could. I mean, the answer could be potentially a 500,000 square foot larger box with loading docks facing Old Mill Road. I mean, there's different things. There's a lot of configurations that could be detrimental to the to the development.
Right.
I mean, to the neighborhood as well, just because that's how it would make it work. I don't want to say the proverbial 100 ways to, because I don't want to offend anyone, but there's 100 ways to do things.
That's all right. I got 2 cats at home.
Yeah, okay. I have a cat too, so I get you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Army Corps built permit, when you submitted that permit, or CEC submitted that permit, had those buildings pushed to the north and that stream was not impacted. That is what they got their original build permit, with that plan in place. You look at the CEC permits, even the latest ones when they took the bite of the apple, none of them ever showed what you're showing in the plan. None of them. It all showed the buildings to the front. The creek was unimpeded except for a culvert to get back with one road. You had a little bit of parking in the front, or you had some of the parking in the front. You did not span the entire length of 1,000 feet with buildings in.
So is that correct?
And as the process, as we go through the process, we provide them with multiple plans.
Okay.
There's minimum degradation, there's preferred degradation, I mean, there's all.
But it's possible to go back to that original plan, is it not?
Not given the current, I'd have to say this, because I'm as the engineer.
Sure.
I don't know what the financial structure is from agreements with.
So the answer to the question is yes, it could go back there, but it goes back to his court as a business case.
Well, but it may not based on tenants that are currently under contract for the site. If you know what I mean, because if you have one,
I didn't realize that you already had everything leased since there's nothing.
No,
there.
well, not
So everything isn't, and not everything is leased.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to fill in my ignorance. That's all I'm trying to do.
So now this brings up a question. I'm looking at the overall landscape plan, which has fair and accurate representation where the building's going to be. So am I hearing that the plans provided to Core for the limited use permit, do you mind showing me here on the plans where the limited use permit is for, just to give me some reference?
Yeah, not on those. It's on the.
Sure. Or does it? Can you?
It's on the limited section.
Right. I don't know if you can say what area
that.
this is. So my question is, the plans that Core has, is it the same design as this?
It's not. That is what's going in.
Okay.
That is what it's going in.
Okay.
It's that process.
He has it.
Never does.
Sorry with all the process. But
Oh no, that's fine.
All right, I need you to take it, so we can kind of keep a little organization here to what's going on.
I apologize, and it's on my phone. It's a very small footprint of other designs of the building, to answer Mr. Kleinman's question. One of them is dated April of 2021. April 15th, 2021, Summit Commerce number 2, Scandal Development. It has a couple different IDs to it, and it does show parking lot on the south side of the stream running between the parking lot and the building, and one building on the back left corner of the parking lot. I don't know where this came from. I just have it in looking up different paperwork and what have you. I saw 148 pages of permits digging through some of the stuff when I was doing this, and it's that Lynn had sent me that are just inundated with information, things that I've seen. I suggest to review all of those and see what you can, because there's different ones in there.
Well, I know it's an evolving process.
Limited grading plan.
Sorry for interrupting. I apologize. Just wanted to show that.
You want to say?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you were kind of alluding. It's a process. I'd probably have 100, maybe not 100, but I have quite a few different iterations of what can go out there, because at one time we had a 400,000+ square foot single big box out there, because that was who the tenant was. That was the hot commodity right then, right? We ended up putting that in another facility, went to another community. So yeah, I can probably show you 50 of them. I'm guessing there were a lot. So yeah, to that point, there is. But again, it all comes to a point where you're at a I don't know if demographics is the right word, but you're at a point right now where it says this is what the.
So I guess it would my process is my feeling would go back to Skinall Properties and say, is there a way to go back to a previous plan that doesn't impede the wetlands and mitigates their concerns, that is also business feasible to a certain extent for your company? Is there a way to balance profit and environment in a way that is good for both parties? Is that possible? Because the way it seems right now to me is that this doesn't. It doesn't, from my perspective.
Yeah, I don't expect you to have that answer now. That's something obviously that you. Yeah, that's something that you need. Surely
you got to crunch numbers and all that stuff. Which I mean, it's not meant to be answered right now, but it's a question I'd like to throw out to you.
Yeah, it's not an easy answer. Yeah, as Matt mentioned, we've gone through multiple iterations. We have tenants that are interested in the community. You know, if we change the plans, those tenants may walk away, and then maybe nothing will ever happen, right? So.
Yeah, and that's not my intent to push away tax dollars or jobs or anything else, but maybe there's a way that we can respect the environment, people's backyards, wetlands, and I don't know, maybe we can find a good, hate sometimes using the word compromise, but finding a meeting of the minds to come to a consensus that works for everybody. I don't know if that's possible, but let's see if we can.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening?
William Peterson, 2386 Old Mill Road. To answer Mr. Shipley's question, we are the property directly across the street from there, which would place your driveway directly across from my house. I believe it might have been you, ma'am, had made the comment that they have the right of access to their property. What about us? You put a third lane down the middle of that road, half of us aren't going to be able to get in and out of our driveways. We have enough of trouble now with Gee Lane on one side. There, we have a bus stop there for children. They also mentioned noise. Okay, so if you put a stop sign in and out of an entrance that's directly across from my house, and the gentleman there already told me he can't tell me if it's a 24-hour, 24, you know, what it's going to be. So they don't know. And I would assume that if you wanted to rent a property there, you know, you're not going to let them dictate your limitations of what you can and cannot use your property for. I mean, does that make sense? And again, I appreciate you bringing that up prior, because it's the first time I've heard about that. It's going to end up noise. I've lived in two separate places where one was a smaller truck depot, nothing anywhere near the footprint of what this is going to be. And it was a block and a half to 2 blocks away from me. That's all you heard. All the time. And something else no one has bothered to even mention about that is, what is your air quality like with all these trucks here? It's going to be horrendous. And then, like I said, you put a stop sign directly in front of my yard, so you're going to have trucks coming in and out, Jake brakes. Some gentlemen don't know how to drive them quite as well as others, so they're going to be bucking them, kicking them all night long. Lights. You had mentioned also that, you know, that they'd be willing to work. I don't want a 50-foot wall in my front yard. Just saying. And I don't believe any of you gentlemen would want to see that coming out of your house every day. It's just, my wife is the second generation in that household. We have children at some point would have loved to see them take over the property, be a third generation to raise our grandkids. I don't even know if I'd feel safe if they were there now. With just what, you know, they're proposing to put in there. It wasn't the plan when we moved out here we moved out of the city to get out of the city. And as you've heard on multiple occasions, multiple times I've been here, it's a little community there. We love it. Our neighbors are great. Hell, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't even tell you half the last names of my neighbors, but I know all the first names. It's just, I don't know. It just, to me, is not acceptable. I keep it short for y'all, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Sandra Baines, 2809 Hunter's Ridge. In 2003, philosopher Glenn Albrecht coined a term, solastalgia, and he defined it as the homesickness you have when you are still at home and your home environment is changing in ways that you find distressing. You may know this term better as environmental grief or ecological grief. And that's defined as the grief felt in relation to experienced or anticipated ecological losses, including the loss of meaningful landscapes. And I bring this up because I just want to acknowledge the mental and the emotional distress and anguish of our fellow Twinsburg residents, and offer my personal condolences to them for what this is causing, what the degradation and destruction of the property behind their homes has already caused for them. I wanted to also talk about in the final site plan review. On page 2, it talks about the proposed project is consistent with the 2014 comprehensive plan objective of attracting and retaining industry and business investment. But that was 2014, this is 2022, and we have a new plan. This is the 2021 comprehensive plan update, and I just want to point out a couple of things briefly that are in this. It says, as the city of Twinsburg matures, it is becoming more important to focus on sustainable practices and sustainable development. Also, in the goals and objectives for the city of Twinsburg section of this document, it says we want to, under land use and community design, we want to support ordinances and policies that encourage natural features preservation and protection, such as tree protection and replacement, and riparian corridor protection. It also talks about promoting sustainable native forests, supporting habitat preservation by discouraging actions that fragment or degrade habitat. Additionally, it says we want to encourage, oh, never mind, that's another note. You had a question, Mike, about how this is going to impact the harmonious relationships. And I just wanted to say that I had an opportunity to spend a few hours with the residents of Old Mill Road and their families, walking through their property and up to the property line and looking at the destruction of the trees in that area. And these people and their children know the name of every weed, tree, little flower that's coming up. It's not even summer yet. There are nature enthusiasts. Their kids are back there playing in the woods, watching birds, enjoying the plants, the wildlife. And they're also, I think they take some pride in being self-sufficient with their water supply. And I just wanted to share that thought. It seems to me that if all of the regulations are in compliance, then the regulations are not sufficiently protective of either the environment or the residents. And that seems like the bottom line. Moving forward, nobody wants this situation again. I would like to make a request to the Planning Commission that you review the ordinances, rules, regulations, laws, etc. regarding development, the approval process to reflect the new 2021 goals and objectives. Specifically, if you could eliminate any ambiguity, quantify wherever possible, increase the transparency and the community involvement. I would also request, if it's possible, I don't know if this is your jurisdiction, but can you raise whatever the permit fee for cutting all those trees down, raise the fee, and place some special protection for trees of the larger size, i.e. older trees. And just to be clear, the Environmental Commission was asked by the residents to review this, which apparently I was told does not qualify for review. So I guess the commission is allowed to just sit there, listen to their concerns, and not do anything, which I disagree with personally. It's not too late to save the trees. It is, there is still time before we move forward further, and I appreciate all your questions to the development company about some sort of compromise. Can Twinsburg buy back the property, make it into a conservation, I don't know. It seems like there should be something we can do before it really is too late. Thank you.
Sign up? Yeah. Just Michael, it's fine. Just come sign your name and or you can wait. You can.
Well, I know. I want people who sign.
Well, take the paper and fill it out while she's speaking. How's that sound? Thank you.
Elsa de Cardenas, I'm 2485 Old Mill Road, Twinsburg resident of city. I'm gonna make this short and sweet because it's pretty much everything's been covered, but I just did want to make a point that I'm an immigrant. My family left our country because we were more or less forced to. Is the bottom line on here is they didn't want to leave their home. And I feel right now like our home is being threatened by what's going on Old Mill Road. For many reasons, I just don't see it beneficial for anybody. But anyways, my parents were grateful to have their lives and lives of their kids when we came here. Coming to the United States, they worked hard. They didn't accept any help because my dad was too proud for that. They came here to the U.S. knowing we would have a good life because we live in a democracy, a government where people participate. We spend a majority of our lives working to take care of our biggest investment, but at this moment, I definitely see that investment being threatened. And again, like everybody says, it's been a year and I'm still trying to comprehend the reason behind the extensive clear cut, done with no regards to wildlife, let alone neighbors. I've seen the impact those trees cut down, that those trees have made. I think back on that day, it was still silence I remember the most, a haunting thought of what life would be without wildlife. We are all smart enough to know that was not a good idea for so many reasons. I believe we live in a world with so many resources and advanced technology. I don't understand why we don't learn from mistakes made in the past and build on that knowledge. Instead, we seem to repeat the same mistakes over and over. All I ask is to look around the world to see that happening. We must contribute to the carbon. Why must we contribute to the carbon footprint? Why can't Twinsburg be the exception? I would rather see us lead in making wise and conscientious choices that better our community and surroundings. Definitely believe as taxpayers we deserve at least that respect and understanding of our concerns. I always said to my children growing up, think twice before you act. I like to think because of that they make good choices and have grown up to be responsible, considerate, and respectful citizens. I plead with you to heed on that same advice. Think twice before you act. Let's pause for a moment. Let's pause for a moment and think about how this is going to impact so much of the surrounding neighbors. Like we've all said, the water, the noise, the lights, the traffic. It's going to be a trickle effect. And we can't just sit back and watch our homes and our livelihood be jeopardized. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dawn Sikowski, 2445 Old Mill. This has to be the longest planning commission meeting ever.
No.
All right. I just have something really quick. I don't know how many of you have read the minutes from the 1992 Planning Commission meeting. Okay. It's very well done. I think there's a little bit of a conflict of interpretation on what was voted on unanimously. It says, any future development along the back property will necessitate the construction of a dedicated road to city standards. Very cut and dry. It doesn't indicate that Consolidated Plastics has to do that. It says any future development. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commission, Old Mill residents, Scannell representatives. I came here just tonight as an observer.
Name and address, please.
Name and address, I thought. Mike Turrell, 99304 Forest Lake Drive. I've done this so many times.
Thank you.
Planning, but thank you. Yeah, I came here tonight as an observer. I learned so many words I never heard tonight, thanks to Mr. Hummel. I learned a lot about what's going on up there. It's truly sad. I grew up in Glenwood Acres, lifelong resident. We had a big wide open field in our backyard where we used to go out there and play, ride dirt bikes and all kinds of stuff. And somewhere about when I was a teenager, so they mowed it over and built Ridge Meadow condos, I think is what it is, behind the Masaras Plaza or whatever, so I can understand a certain amount of their pain. A lot of it. I still have all the parks and stuff that I grew up in, and so I can understand wanting to hold on to what we have. I understand Skinnell Properties made an investment that they would like to see a return on their investment, of course. All these people on Old Mill Road made an investment in their homes, and they want to maintain that investment. They want to maintain their quality of life. This is really, there's a big problem here. Big problem. You guys, God bless you, you got some work on your hands here. It's really not anybody's fault. The fault is, this is bad zoning. And nobody here had anything to do with that zoning when this was changed in 1987, someone said? 87?
88.
When it went from residential. Okay, yeah. And I didn't even know what the heck zoning might have been back then. I do now. We can drive through our neighbor to the north over here in Oakwood, and I'm not bashing Oakwood or their residents or anything, but you'll have a house, 3 or 4 houses, an industrial park, a couple more houses, some commercial buildings, a couple more houses, a hair salon, a house, a bar. That is bad zoning. What we have here is an I-2 building, which is legal and permitted, provided they follow the avenues that they have to, right across the street from some houses. That is just bad zoning. That never should have happened. That's not the Old Mill residents' fault. It's not Skinnell's fault. It certainly isn't the Planning Commission's fault, but it's what we got to deal with right now. And we got to figure out some way to make this a harmonious fit so that they can be good neighbors, so that they can still enjoy their quality of life. I hope that this can come to some kind of a good conclusion, that these two parties can work together. As Mr. Kleinman said, hopefully they can come up with a different plan that can, what did you say, something that it could be financially feasible and fit within the desires, something along that line. Well, along with the desires of the Old Mill residents, that would to me be the very definition of harmonious. And I looked up harmonious. Yeah, it's not in our zoning code or any of our definitions or anywhere, but I think everybody pretty much has an idea what harmonious means. I would like to thank Skinnell Properties for answering the questions as best they could. Spur of the moment. I'm not used to hearing that. I would really like to thank the Old Mill residents. I would like to thank Mr. DeFabio for representing his residents as much as anything. And I would especially like to thank our Planning Commission for the questions that you asked, for the attention that you paid, and for the time that you're going to have moving forward into this, into making your decisions as to either to recommend or to not recommend. I appreciate Mr. Scott Barr for representing council here tonight. Too bad you didn't have some more of your cohorts here. You got a whole lot to bring them up to speed on. And
yeah, we got 2 out of 7.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's your ward.
I knew I recognized you. You're still kind of new on council to me. But no, thank you, Karen, Ms. Labby, for representing. And yeah, I think the rest of the council and our mayor is going to want to watch this one back. Is this being videotaped? Yeah, they got a lot of information to take in, but I want to thank all you people and Ms. Muter for being right there to answer questions too. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move forward now with the regular meeting agenda. You'll have one last opportunity to address. Yeah, we thought we were at the end there with Mr. Turl. Go ahead and name and address, please.
2258 Old Mill Road.
I'm sorry, say again?
It's Brad Geller, 2258 Old Mill. I've been on Old Mill Road 52 years. It's not a wide road. It's a busy road. It is now. When I was a kid, hell, you could go lay down in the middle of the street and not worry about anything. I know traffic studies have been done. Now, I leave my house at 5:45 in the morning. I don't have it off. But I've been off, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm the 7th house from Darrow Road. The cars are stopped there and backed up beyond that. I mow my ditch with a weed eater. You're gonna have 2 tractor trailers crossing each other. You guys been down Old Mill Road? You know where that white line is? You know where my ass is with that weed eating? These are things, and then when Old Mill, that finally got paved for the first time ever, because it was just tarred and cindered, is destroyed by this truck traffic. And it's like taking a ride to Macedonia down Highland Road. And I gotta listen to these trucks rattle through all them potholes all night long because my windows are open. Who's maintaining that? I can't not mow my ditch because the county has an open ditch policy. They won't let me fill it. That's all I got. There's safety problems.
Thank you.
Tom Rummel, 2278 Old Mill Road. We had a question on whether it was 24/7 business. We had an answer of, we don't know who's gonna go in there. We had a question of, can we refigure the settings and everything? The answer was, well, we have tenants in there that are gonna be coming in there, we might lose them. I don't know if you guys can understand what's going on right here, but they're just feeding you lines of crap. Like,
I don't think it's that. I'm going to guess by what they were saying is they may have some commitments or some interest.
Talking to somebody. If they had a question of whether it's 24/7, they could simply call that person and say, hey, we have concerns with the community. We just wanted to see whether you were considering 24/7, not we don't have tenants or we have nobody going in there. That's just a blatant lie. I'm sorry. Sure. Like, I get what you're saying. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Please keep our comments in a good, respectful way, addressing the
absolutely,
commission,
absolutely.
please.
Thank you very much. Second, the traffic study. I don't know who did that study, but you know, Brad was just talking about how bad it's lined up. Do you understand that left-hand turning lane is approximately 137 feet? A tractor trailer is about 70 to 80 feet. You can't fit 2 truck and trailers in there. You can't fit 2. That means half that ass is hanging out into 91. That means it's going to be blocking even more traffic. So now we have traffic lined up even further. I don't need answers from them because he's just going, well, we're going by, you know, the studies, or we're going by, you know, the policies that we're allowed to go by. They're going by what they're told to do. I'm not upset with them. I don't care about that. I'm expressing this to you guys and hoping that you guys look at that and see that there's no way someone with any sense thought that was a good idea to make. There's gonna be 3 or 4 truck and trailers trying to make that turn, you know. And then the other thing is one thing, this isn't something nobody would ever know unless they're sitting in my house trying to map something out on MapQuest or Waze. I've looked up something to go somewhere on Waze. It told me to take a right-hand turn down Old Mill. By the way, I'm right across from this whole thing. I'm about 2 or 3 doors down. So it told me to take a right down Old Mill and then a left down Ravenna to get to 480. How many of those truck drivers you think are going to be pulling out of there? They're going to put in their Waze that's going to tell them the same thing, to make a left-hand turn rather than a right-hand turn. So these are the expressions that we're trying to figure out. You know, I know you guys are being told like they do or don't, but someone needs to come up with an answer. Like I know everybody's just beating around the bush and giving you the answers to pass us by, but you know, come on, guys. Like, you know, I appreciate everything you do, and don't get me wrong. We're very passionate because this isn't just a business that we're going to build up and walk away from. These are our houses. These are our lives. Like, you know, my kids are going to be there. You know, I got a mailbox that's across the street. Who's going to redo that if they widen the street? You know, those are the questions. Like, you know, And that's, I don't even want that to happen, but Grant's right. I don't care if you've driven down there or not. I don't need to question that. Have you driven down there in a semi-truck? Probably not. I've driven down there in a dually with a 30-foot horse trailer on the back of it, and I've tried to back into my driveway doing that. That is extremely difficult. And we've had about 20 to 30 cars lined up just doing that sometimes. And that's sometimes just a straight shot. So these are things that like nobody's going to think of unless they've lived there, unless they've done that. These are the things that we see every day, that we deal with every day. And I'm not kidding on that ways thing. Like, that will take them down Old Mill to Ravenna. Forget coming up that way from Frost Road. They're going to go down that way. And these are just the little things that we're just asking you guys to think about. We appreciate everything. And I don't like to politicize anybody's death, but I just had a friend out in California, not my direct friend, but his friend was just killed by a car, and he's a cyclist. And I know you ride bikes down our street. And I know we have a couple other people that do too. I mean, we're already worried about the kids. I know my heart worries when these guys are driving down, riding their bikes down that street, because I know how tight it is. So again, that's all I gotta say. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have just a question for the residents in the township. With some of the comments that I've heard tonight, have any of you ever addressed the township or the county about the speed limit? I mean, you're talking about traffic issues that have nothing to do with this development that you're already dealing with people speeding and issues. And one of the things in trying to reduce it, and somebody seemed like they didn't like that idea or they didn't care about it, but it sounds like you've had a problem for a while with this. Have you tried it, and were they non-receptive to doing it? I need someone, I'm sorry, I asked a question. I guess if you can come up and answer to the mic so it comes on the... And you may not, and maybe no one knows if it's been done, but if you had, that's what I wanted to know. Oh, here we go, here's the right guy, right?
Anytime there's been a concern brought by the residents, we put the sheriff, they put the trailer out there with the speed sign, they do the traffic study with the speed sign and see what people are speeding. I believe it was last meeting, which was this past Wednesday, we voted to, or no, that was Haddon Road, but I heard that the county is lowering the speed limit to 35, because that's a county road.
Thank you.
But in answer to your question, whenever there's a concern raised, we do put we do notify the sheriff, and they come out and take care of the problem.
The Band-Aid on the issue. Correct. All right. Thank you. I appreciate your response.
That was me. That's what they've told me. They can lower it for the distance from Darrow Road to the project site. To go beyond that, they require a speed study, but they can lower it without the speed study to make it match the 35 mile.
All right, thank you.
Just for the record, I just wanted to say we do not have a tenant that has signed a lease. We're talking to tenants who have looked at our current site plan that you've seen today, and that's what's been communicated. It's all been pending. We haven't said that it's approved or anything like that, but that's just kind of speculative conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weber.
Just to clarify, I mean, there are two buildings there. So, I mean, even if one building has a tenant, the other building would not have a tenant. And so that's what I'm saying is there could be multiple tenants within there, right? They're multi-tenant facilities. And I think you understood what I was saying. Just wanted clarification.
Absolutely.
There could be multiple tenants, and one of them could come in someday requesting 24/7. That's why we kind of took that.
Right, which makes sense.
Okay.
Anybody else who...
So to go back to I've been talking with the county engineer quite a bit over this. I keep in contact with them. Typically, the traffic study and the speed limit issues, it's based on volume of traffic typically. They've done traffic studies on Old Mill for quite a while, and it's never reached the quote-unquote tipping point to drop it down to 35.
So now, maybe these traffic studies indicate that the volume of traffic is gonna bring it up to the point where it will tip it to 35, because that's what I thought the criteria was. So therein lies the fact that maybe their traffic study indicates an increase in traffic that I'm not seeing in the study per se. So, and the other thing is really for ease of those trucks coming down. If you get into the county side and you're coming down 45 and they need to get into that left turn lane, they can't be coming down from 45 once they pass, because that's all 45 on the south side road. So that makes it very difficult for the developer, the trucks. I mean, they can't have that. That has got to be slowed down to allow that to happen. If it stayed at 45, it'd be very difficult for the developer to even be turning in there. So I'll be calling the county engineer tomorrow.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, do it.
Titus Patsalik. I live on 2646 Old Mill Road.
Your last name again?
Titus Patsalik.
Thank you.
I bought my house May of 2020. It was a really exciting point of my life. Very young at buying a house. And I valued the house at a certain amount, and I expected it to hold value. An investment that they made as well. So I understand you buy something, you see value in it, and you want to make it more valuable. So I understand where they're coming from, but there's certain ways they do things, and there's certain things that I want to do to my property, but I can't because of the laws that you guys set in place and, well, the township. But my wife and I bought the house and we're really excited, and we want to keep the rural area that we kept. And the safety is a concern for the roads, the quality of the road. When we first drove down the road, I probably only drove down Old Mill a few times before I bought the house. And when I drove down that road, I saw all the trees on the left side where they cleared it. And I was like, man, this is like driving down a park. It looks like a parkway. And then even further, like a few months after I bought the house, I saw all these parks. And so, like, literally, I cycled on the road. I just bought a motorcycle. I have a kayak. And so I go all these parks, the metro parks. And so that's why I bought the house. And for all the people that live here, that's also why they bought their houses, because they saw value in it and they wanted to protect it. And so now we're seeing something that's hindering our home. We want to fight back, but we may not all do it right, but we all try. And we're asking for your guys' help. And so hopefully we can move forward and either buy the property back and make it into a park or something to where it preserves the land that we have in the township and kind of can keep it in that way, or make the building smaller, like you said. But that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a closing?
Make it as simple in closing. Thank you, Planning Commission, for all the time you've put into this, and thank you to the public for actually taking an interest in coming out. Again, we feel that we've worked within the guidelines that are put before us, and I just respectfully ask that you guys take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to roll on to the next item on the regular meeting agenda, which is the revised final site plan building addition for Mold Right at 2222 Highland Road. I know the applicant was not able to stay. Mr. Weber agreed to stand in for him. It's my understanding, and you can say this is yes or no to the best of your knowledge, that based on the conditions that I mentioned during the work session of the consolidation of the parcels, the replacement of the existing fire hydrant, approval of the SWP3 Summit Soil and Water, and approval of the new lighting by the city engineer, he was acceptable of all those items.
That is correct. He is in agreement with the conditions.
Is there anything else that he asked you to share with us?
That he appreciated the opportunity to sit through part of this and the willingness of you to allow him to go.
Thank you. Did anybody else have any questions regarding the mold right specifically?
See, engineers are just like lawyers. You remind me of my old days of private practice where I'd cover for somebody that had something else going on. Refreshing to see.
I do work for them and represent them on a number of things.
I have nothing further.
Lynn, anything else on this?
Nothing else on this?
What were the contingencies again?
I'll read them through here as we go. All right, so I'd like to make the following motion. Upon reliance upon representations made by the applicant and their representatives, along with the submitted site plans for Mold Right Plastics Building Addition, 2222 Highland Road, permanent parcel number 64-09689 and 64-09690, date stamped received March 29th, 2022. I move for final site plan approval with the following conditions. 1, consolidation of the 2 parcels into 1. 2, replacement of the existing fire hydrant as noted in the planner's report. 3, final approval of the SWP3 by Summit Soil and Water. And 4, approval of the new lighting by the city engineer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. You point at each other. So, second by David. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinman?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Approval 4-0. The next item on the agenda is the final site plan for the industrial buildings at 2321 and 2387 Old Mill Road. I am going to make a recommendation this evening that we table this item for further discussion so that Planning Commission has opportunity to speak with ourselves, each other, to address any questions that we might have towards Skinnell Properties and Mr. Weber, and for the opportunity for any members of the community. There was a lot of information tonight, obviously, that everybody threw out, and I know we record this and we try to put meeting minutes together, and it's difficult to capture everything. I would ask that if you have specific questions or points that you can be kind of concise and to the point about as best as possible. And I know this is hard to say, without the emotional aspect, because we know it's super emotional for you guys, but emotions is part of it, don't get me wrong, but facts and getting things right and knowing that, again, we have zoning regulations and codes. That's what we use to look at things. That's what the developers use. And I'm going to be honest with you, they have developed this parcel of land within every regulation that our current zoning code exists. Okay? As it exists right now, they are not asking for a single variance. I need you to make sure you understand that. I mean, that's part of the process. And I know it doesn't make anybody happy, and maybe the zoning needs to change. I'll be honest with you, I wish that they had developed this to not the full extent that they have. But they followed what's in front of them and what the city of Twinsburg has at this time. Now, that being said, we're still going to try to work with them to get something that I'm going to say in air quotes better, that is a combination of making this viable for them and yet trying to make it better for the residents. And it's a very fine line that we have to walk down, and we hope you understand that. Again, that being said, please send any emails, I would assume, to Lynn. I'm sure her email address is available on the city website. She'll pass on information, I'm sure, to the developer and to us for consideration, and we'll continue to discuss this as well going forward. So again, I'm going to make a motion that we table the final site plan review for 2321 and 2387 Old Mill Road until next meeting.
I'll second. Michael, you got this one.
That's right. Second by Michael. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinman?
Yes.
Communications and miscellaneous. Anything, David?
No.
Craig?
No, nothing I have.
Michael?
Great first meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you both to Michael for joining us new and for Craig for staying on. Scott, anything?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Lynn, anything to share as far as anything on the,
Now I guess we'll have this on the next agenda.
this will be for sure.
Just a quick one. I appreciate everybody getting up at the firing line. I've been on both sides of the table. And I really hope somehow there can be discussion and maybe everything can be worked out among the community. And I'd ask everybody to put as much aside emotion on both sides, emotion or financial calculation. I'm definitely not an anti-development person, but I really hope you guys can, in the interim, maybe sit down and see if something can be reached. That's all I got.
Thank you. I need a motion to excuse Mr. Shebeck, who was unable to attend tonight because of a commitment for his daytime job. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
So I just need
Just to say that?
motion. Yeah, just that's
I'll
my
take motion.
motion by Craig. Second.
I'll second.
Second by David. Do we give him a hard time? Roll call, please.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinman,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen.
Yes. Let's see, what do we got there? 10:50 adjournment.